Welcome to Midwest Paranormal Presents Paranormal Soup. I'm your host, Jason Bland, and tonight we have guest Bruce Solheim. I forgot to ask him how to pronounce his last name. Hopefully I got that right. Dr. Bruce Solheim. He has written a book, two books actually, Timeless, A Personal Paranormal History, and Deja Vu, Timeless Deja Vu. We're going to talk about those. Somebody is a kindred spirit to me because I've been reading his first book so far. I'm like halfway through. He's somebody who's had a lot of paranormal experiences, and he's like me, questioning what that is, what are the mechanics. He's also has the ability to speak to the dead. He, not like a practicing professional medium, but he does it for his friends and relatives, and he's able to communicate to the other side. So we're going to get his perspective on that tonight. And of course, what we do every Sunday night is the World Wide Web of Weird, and we got a lot of weird to talk about tonight, some science stuff to talk about, actually. And we will have open phone lines later in the show. I'll give out those phone numbers in just a little bit. But let's go ahead and get rolling on into it. Welcome to another night of Paranormal Soup. As I said before, I'm your host, Jason Bland. All right, well, tonight we got a great show lined up. Bruce Solheim, hopefully I'm getting that right. We'll find out here in a second. We got him on the Google Hangouts, so we will have all 4 phone lines open. For those listening on our Paranormal Soup radio network, we are also a webcast. If you haven't seen us before, you can go to Midwest Paranormal Presents Paranormal Soup and watch the show on Facebook, or you can go to YouTube and just type in Paranormal Soup, Jason Bland. You'll find the channel. We're live there as a webcast if you want to watch. But if you just want to listen, I totally understand. That's why I made the radio network. All right, let's go ahead and bring up my panel here, hopefully. Let's see if I can get this working. All right, there we go. All right. First off, we got Rob from St. Augustine, Florida. How you doing tonight, Rob?
Doing great. How's everybody doing tonight?
Doing good. You sound like you're like helium. Say something again.
How about now?
You still sound like you're on helium.
Really?
Yeah, it totally does. Doesn't it, Jamie?
A few octaves high.
Yeah.
Maybe I am.
All right. That's my beautiful co-host, Jamie D. How you doing tonight, Jamie?
Doing great, thank you.
And then our guest is with us. Jeffrey's not going to be on the World Wide Web of Weird tonight. I will be manning the articles. No videos tonight, actually, so I got it pretty easy. But our guest, Bruce Solheim. Am I getting the last name right? I didn't even ask.
Yes, you're pronouncing it correctly. Yeah, Solheim.
Solheim. Wow, that's a first. Well, thank you, Bruce, for joining us tonight. I'm excited to talk about your books. Like I said, I didn't get to finish the first one like halfway through. I am totally enjoying it. You're a man after my own heart because these different paranormal experiences, as I'm reading them, I'm like, man, I have people tell me I need to write a book because I've had a lot of experiences like you have, and I feel like it gives us a different perspective than a lot of other people because we notice things others don't.
I highly encourage you to write it. I really do.
That's what everybody does. Well, speaking of weird, we should roll into our World Wide Web of Weird.
Do I still come on helium? Or is it better?
It still sounds like helium. It's going to make the World Wide Web of Weird even better.
Okay, cool.
Tonight on the World Wide Web of Weird, as I mentioned before, it's a lot of science stuff, some interesting articles. I don't have any videos tonight, so if you're just listening, you're not missing much. They have really good video evidence. Of course, I always see UFO videos and stuff, but, I like to have something that has some provenance or a witness or something, so I don't just show any old UFO video I see or Bigfoot video. I like a story, so I didn't have a lot of that tonight, but I got some science stuff, and one that's really kind of close to my heart is this one on Alzheimer's from Science Alert. Scientists can clear Alzheimer's plaque from mice using only light and sound. Again, those listening on our radio network, Paranormal Soup Radio 24/7, we are a webcast. You can usually, if we have videos or pictures, you can come watch there. Tonight, you can really just listen. It's really a lot of articles. I don't think I had, nothing video-wise. Scientists clear Alzheimer's plaque from mice using only light and sound. Clumps of harmful proteins that interfere with brain functions have been partially cleared in mice using nothing but light and sound. Research led by MIT has found strobe lights and low-pitched buzz can be used to create brainwaves lost in the disease, which in turn remove plaque and improve cognitive function in mice engineered to display Alzheimer's-like behavior. It's like using light and sound to trigger their own brainwaves to help fight the disease. The technique hasn't been clinically trialed in humans as yet. It's soon to be to get a trial soon. Brainwaves are known to work differently in human than in mice, though. But if replicated, these early results hint at a possible cheap and drug-free way to treat the common form of dementia. I find this interesting. I hope it has some merit. Advanced previous studies that showed flashing light 40 times a second into the eyes of an engineered mice treated their version of Alzheimer's disease. Researchers sound of a similar frequency found to dramatically improve their results. When we combine visual and auditory stimulation for a week, we see the engagement of the prefrontal cortex and a very dramatic reduction of the amyloid. They need to do something for Alzheimer's. I lost my grandmother to it. I lost my grandfather on my dad's side to it, if that, or dementia. It's the worst way to go. That's all I can say. It's the worst. And I pray they come up with something. And, I don't know how light and sound, maybe really just bleeping in the eye, maybe it cures mice. You really got to do human trials on this for us to have any hope to see if this does anything. But it doesn't sound like it costs a lot of money. I don't see how a pharmaceutical company could get a hold of that and say, we're going to charge you, $20,000 for the Alzheimer's treatment with light and sound. but they'll find a way.
Sure they can figure it out.
Yeah, exactly. All right, this next one, speaking of more science, research team, this is from japannews.com. Research team wakes up mammoth cell nuclei. New findings indicate that the resurrection of mammoths is not a fantasy. A research team, including members of the Kandy University, is saying after cell nuclei extracted from the 28,000-year-old remains of a woolly mammoth were discovered to retain some function. When placed in an ova of mice, the nuclei developed to a state just before cellular division, according to a paper published Monday in the British Journal of Scientific Reports. The team includes researchers from Japanese and Russia universities, has been working for about 20 years on a project to use cloning to resurrect mammoths, an animal that has long been extinct. I believe we covered on the World Wide Web before that in Russia they were trying to build a Jurassic Park in a way. They were trying to build a park where they could bring back extinct animals. And the mammoth is like top on their list to do. The cell nuclei used in the team's recent findings were extracted from muscular and other tissues from the yucca, and about 3.5 meter long female woolly mammoth excavated nearly intact in 2010 from the permafrost in Siberia. When inserted into the mouse ova, 5 out of 43 nuclei were observed to develop to a point just before the nuclei would split into two as a result of cell division. So it's at the beginning stages. Should we? I mean, I don't know. I mean, it'd be cool to see a woolly mammoth. I have a little mad scientist inside of me that's like, yeah, do it. Cool, do it. And there's other part of me that's like the chaos theory, too much Jurassic Park, and, these things go bad.
Park. I know how that ends.
Yeah. Man, you still sound like a chipmunk, Rob.
Damn it. I'm going to come back.
Oh, my God. This is the weirdest thing. Oh, no, I love it.
I'm going to disconnect and come back. I'll be back.
Okay. All right. And then everybody knows how much I love time travel. This is from the dailymail.co.uk. There's a number of different articles. I just picked them. Move over maybe because it was the Doctor Who reference. Move over Doctor Who. Time machine created in Russia moves tiny particles a fraction of a second into the past. Why does it never move? Let's move a bunny or something to the past. It's always something really small. It's as far as we're getting with time travel, but it's still exciting. A time machine that moves tiny particles at a function of a second into the past was built in Russia. Why is it Russia, huh? Scientists have claimed. Fake news. It may not rival Doctor Who's TARDIS, but researchers have described it as being able to move the smaller than atom-sized objects in the opposite direction of a time's arrow. Their experiment involved electrons, negatively charged particles that make up an atom, found in the realm of quantum mechanics, the study of subatomic particles. I love how they always have to tell us all that. They gave the analogy of a break for a game of pool in which the balls are substitutes for the electrons. After the break, the balls are scattered in what should be a haphazard way, according to the laws of physics. But researchers managed to make the reform in the original triangle break order, appearing as if they were turning back time using a special quantum computer. Researchers from the Laboratory of Physicists from Moscow Institute of Physicists and Technology say they have effectively defied the second law of thermodynamics with the experiment. This is a rule within physics that governs the direction of events from the past to the future, stating that everything in our universe tends towards decay. The time machine is built from a basic quantum computer, which is made up of qubits. These are units of information described by ones and zeros or mixed superpositions of both that can be stored on an electron. In the experiment, an evolution program was launched which caused the qubits to become increasingly complex, changing patterns of zeros and ones. During the process, the order was lost, just as it was when pool balls are struck and scattered with a cue. Another program then modified the state of the quantum computer in such a way that it evolved backwards from the chaos to order. The state of the qubits was rewound back to its original starting point. So this is basically like a simulation. I mean, I'm not a physicist or a smart person, to understand this. Just like, where's my DeLorean? Okay, cool. You made a pool reference. Okay, I want my DeLorean. I want my TARDIS. I'm not expecting a TARDIS. I mean, I don't expect you to use a big black hole. Or, just give me the car, a cool car with a time machine. I did read another article I didn't have for tonight, which mentioned using two micro black hole or singularities to time travel or open up a doorway. And I thought that was interesting since that was what John Teeter, the whole time travel thing, if it was a hoax, talked about. All right, let's move on. Getting off topic. All right. Let's see. Number 4 in the World Wide Web of Weird. I'm a little off my game trying to run it here. This is from UFOsightingsdaily.com. Now, there's always a lot of Mars stuff I see all the time. Like, look at this. It's your aunt. It's Aunt May on Mars, or it's, I don't know. They just, they see all kinds of stuff on Mars. And I'm like, it's a rock. But this I thought was interesting. If you're, people watching, this would be something listeners would want to see. It looks like a sheet metal with a circle, a perfect circle in it. New Mars discovery of sheet metal with perfect circle in it. March 2019, NASA link in the description here. UFO sighting news. The sheet of metal with a perfect circle through it was posted on YouTube by the alien researcher What's Up in the Sky 37. This object is the perfect appearance of sheet metal with a perfect circle in it. The circle has not been cut, but rather designed into what we see as a smooth edges. NASA has a photo editing team at Johnson Space Center that edits out any of the anomalies that could have been created by aliens. However, they may have missed this one. I can't say they missed it by accident since it's so obvious, but probably did this on purpose to sneak the truth out there. And that's what we've said. Is NASA slowly letting? If they're really trying to keep things secret, then they have messed up. They've not done a great job because people have pointed out stuff all the time. So they're not done the greatest job, or maybe, I don't know. Or maybe it is because there are people at NASA like, man, screw the man. I didn't see nothing. I don't see nothing in this photo. Just let it slip by.
Is there another photo of that to show comparison to how big it is?
If Jeff was here, he would have it. But no, there isn't. No, they probably wouldn't. I don't think they have that. They just have this one photo. There's nothing. I don't know how you would get the comparison. I don't know how big that is. This is probably zoomed in on it too. They see this little speck, and somehow some nerd out there that really looks at this stuff. Nerds.
Lithium space modulator.
I thought you were going back to the helium voice there for a second.
Is it gone now?
It's gone. Okay, I kind of miss it. It was fun. It would have been fun for the worldwide.
I can go back.
No, that's all right. It's all right. But I see a lot of stuff people say they see on Mars. But I thought if this is legit, this isn't somebody just posting something saying it was from a rover or whatever. If this is legit, well, that's interesting because that is a perfect circle. That is just not likely to happen on nature on its own, and it looks like a sheet metal. Maybe it's a piece that fell off of the rover. I don't know. Maybe it's a piece that fell off something.
Jason?
Yeah.
Or space junk.
Yeah, Bruce.
It kind of looks like the chain guard from my old Schwinn bike. That's
yeah.
Just throw them along on our Schwinn bikes on Mars.
The picture somebody took in a Walmart parking lot.
But it's the thing. It looks like something constructed. It could look like a lot of things. It looks like, but if anything, it doesn't look like some random piece of rock. No. It looks like sheet metal with a big perfect circle hole cut into it. I don't know. People are still arguing over the face of Mars. Everybody's seen anything. I think NASA's not really worried about it because nobody else cares.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's the problem. Is like I've said before, you could go out in your backyard, take a picture of an actual UFO, post it online, and everybody go, "Oh, it's fake."
Yeah, pretty much. Or oh yeah, it's real. I don't care. Yeah. What are the Kardashians doing? Okay,
exactly.
Well, let's move on. All right, so let's see. This one, I love haunted objects. I don't know. Why, for one? Why does a spirit attach itself to just an object? This is from Fox News. Fake news! Thrift store warns buyers of haunted furniture reports of continuous nightmares from previous owners. North Carolina thrift store has earned $1,000 off hand-carved bedroom suite. They may just be haunted. Here's the advertisement. $1,000 two-piece bedroom suite, queen canopy bed, high boy chest of drawers, hand-carved in the 1950s. By a sinister serial killer. No, I didn't say that. Please note, previous owner reports that the high boy is haunted. He reports continuous nightmares for he and his wife while it was in their room. He also reports that the dogs would not stop barking at it. Here's the dresser and bed set. It does look old. It does. This North Carolina thrift store has earned $1,000 off hand-carved bedroom suite that may be haunted. News outlets, I cannot talk tonight, reports Habitat for Humanity, Rowan County Restore warned would-be customers that the previous owner reported he and his wife had continuous nightmares, blah, blah, blah. We read that part. The store's director of operations, Elizabeth Brady, says 2 regular customers were intrigued and paid full price, but they didn't believe the furniture was actually haunted. As Christian Housing Ministry officials wanted to make a full disclosure to the buyers, the furniture was said to be haunted. But I want to know what happened. Did they get home? Did the bed shake? You see these things advertised, and people sell haunted dolls and all that stuff online. Yeah. But I don't know. This could be. I mean, if anything's going to be haunted by a spirit, I would think a bed would be a good one. Because, I mean, that's something you sleep in every night. I mean, you're definitely leaving some kind of imprint on it. You know? I was thinking about that actually the other night. I have like a blanket my mom made me that I sleep with. My wife drives her nuts that I won't sleep with the same blanket as her. But I'm like, man, if I die, that thing's haunted. Because that's like my blanket. Like it goes everywhere with me. Thank you, Mom. But yeah, I have a blankie. But I'm saying that would be if I had to think of something that's been with me for a long time that, you know, it's got my imprint on it. That would be it. So I don't know.
Okay, Linus.
I am Linus. I really am. Okay. Let's move on. All right. Number 6 here. Let me see. Running the World Wide Web of Weird here. I'm a little rusty. Let's see. Number 6. Here we go. This is from Unexplained Mysteries. Man's life saved by a mobile phone blocks arrow. A 43-year-old man in Australia narrowly escaped death this week after his phone was hit by an incoming arrow. The man's remarkable dice with death occurred in the town of Nimbin in New South Wales on Wednesday after he was confronted outside his house by an attacker who was armed with a bow. That's what happens, man. They took our guns. Now they got bow and arrows. All right. He raised his mobile phone to take a photograph. That's what you do. If somebody's pointing a bow and arrow, you're going to take a photograph out of them.
Take a picture.
And that's all right. He raises
the
his
world
mobile
we live in now.
Right. Exactly. Well, let me get a picture of that here. And he pulls back the bow. Let me get a picture of that. Yeah, he's trying to kill you. As he raised the mobile phone to take a photograph, the assailant fired an arrow which went through a remarkable stroke of luck, happened to strike the device instead of him. The phone was knocked back into the man's face, cutting him, but he was otherwise unscathed. Lucky idiot. According to police reports, the attacker was later arrested at the scene. He has since been charged with armed assault and will appear in court next month. But, man, you are one lucky idiot, man. I wonder if there's a picture like that just captured that. It's like somewhere in that phone that they can get off the cloud, maybe. I would love to see that picture. You know, that he needs to see that picture and see this picture so you realize, like, yeah, somebody points a bow and arrow at you. Now's not the time to get a good snapshot or a selfie. You might get really photobombed. I don't know. Not a good time. You know, you're gonna have a bad time. All right, let's go. One more article here. One more. This one really interests me, and a lot of stuff is science tonight. And earlier, you know, I talked about the first article is about what they're trying to do to cure Alzheimer's. To me, the brain's one of the most mysterious things. You know, space is mysterious and psychic powers and paranormal stuff, but the brain itself is a crazy thing. And this story really proves the point of it. From Unexplained Mysteries, again, I like them because they have really short articles. A woman blacks out and forgets the last 40 years. A woman from Louisiana forgot her entire adult life after suffering from a sudden extreme bout of memory loss. 56-year-old grandmother Kim DeNicola I probably butchered that, sorry Kim, had been walking to her friend's car after attending a Bible class at her church when she experienced a sudden sharp headache and passed out on the spot. When she awoke in a hospital a short time later, the last 40 years had been wiped from her memory. As far as she was concerned, it was the year 1980. She was almost 18 years old, and Reagan was in the White House. She had no memory of her husband, her children, her grandchildren, her family business, or anything that happened to her over the last 4 decades. It was as through someone had flicked a switch in her brain, and it wiped it all out. Doctors eventually diagnosed her with a condition known as transient global amnesia. That's just the doctor's like, yeah, we know what this is. It's transient global amnesia, yes, which is typified by temporary loss of recent memory. In Kim's case, however, her memories haven't returned. A news report featuring the interview with Kim is listed in this. Like I said, you can get on Unexplained Mysteries. I'm not going to play their video. It's their news report. But what's interesting to me, when you go watch the video, the news interview with her, and she, in her mind, when she wakes up in the hospital, she's waking up from, like, just the other day she was 18. Like, it wiped it all back. It's almost like time travel, which we talked about time travel earlier. It's all coming back in a circle. But she, in a way, experienced time travel. All those memories were erased, but in her mind, she's still 18. She wakes up, she looks old. You know, it was just the other day she was, you know, walking around and she was 18. And now imagine waking up and all that's gone. You know, you're now old and have grandkids and a job and a life, and you don't know any of it. It'd be like traveling to the future. And that's what she does. Like, she's like, man, the phone's got really small. TV's got really thin, you know. Those were the comments, you know, anybody would expect. But she actually, in a way, got to experience what it'd be like to suddenly travel to the future. But it's sadly because all of her memories are gone. And that's, imagine the brain can reset and put you back in that moment, make you think you're 18. The brain stored all that. We've had so many guests recently talk about the power of the subconscious and that it sees and knows and records everything. Well, this story is one of those definite proofs of that, because she rewound all the way back. In her personality, she's 18. One of her husbands like, hey, put the keg down. Or like she's going out and want to party. Imagine, if I reverted back to when I was 18, man, there'd be trouble. There'd be problems.
Yeah.
I'm a totally different person than I was when I was 18.
I was going to say, sometimes I kind of wish that would happen to me, but then again, there's a downside.
No, I don't.
Yeah.
No, I don't want to be my 18 stupid self. Not at all.
Yeah.
But that's it. That's it for the World Wide Web of Weird. So it didn't have a lot of videos or articles. I think the last World Wide Web of Weird outdid it because we had like all videos. This one we had like none. There's just nothing as good paranormal wise that I thought. Like I said, I want provenance to the video. I don't want to just there's videos every week, every day, but I want a provenance. I want a story. I'm just going to show everything. So nothing good. Maybe next week we'll have that. But we had some good science articles, good stuff with that. Well, tonight's guest, Bruce Solheim. We will get to him here after this first commercial break. When we do, just wait till the second commercial break. We'll actually open up the phone lines then, not during the first one. Just hang in there. We want to get Bruce's story out. And then we'll open the phone lines, and you guys can join the conversation. It's going to be a very chunky paranormal soup tonight because we got a lot of different topics to cover. All right, guys, we'll be back after this short commercial break. Don't forget, go check out our Patreon page. Whatever you can do to help with this show. It's not for free. I have to pay money to stream out to the radio, actually stream out to YouTube and Facebook. If you can help out, that'd be great. And we maybe can do more stuff, trying to get this up on iTunes as a podcast. Anything you can do to help at $1 a month or $2 a month for our Patreon page is greatly appreciated. All right, guys, we'll be back with our guest, Bruce Solheim, in just a few minutes.
You were brought here for one purpose, necromancy.
A ceremony dating back to the pre-Christian era. It's the art of reviving the dead. It requires involvement with evil spirits by the person performing the act.
The devil god brings life to the dead.
No, please. No, please, no.
And death to the living. Necromancy. Starring Orson Welles and Pamela Franklin. From Cinerama releasing. In color, rated PG, parental guidance suggested.
If you are interested in discovering the truth about the paranormal and want to hear from leading researchers in the field, join Justin Brown on his 3 weekly shows named My Paranormal Soapbox, Necromancer Live Show, and the Supernatural Symposium, live on Facebook, YouTube, and InterfaceDeath.net.
He is conducting an experiment into the combined effects of sensory deprivation and hallucinatory drugs. The subject of the experiment is himself, and the experiment is out of control. Ken Russell's Altered States, a film that must not be missed, is in the West End now. Altered States, Certificate X.
Hello, I am Fernando Martinez. I think by now you know I am an emotional kind of guy. People stop me in the street and say, Fernando, what the hell is wrong with me? Silk shirt, hairy chest, enough aftershave to drown a household pet, but I still cannot get a woman. I tell them you are an ignorant fool. Without a symbol of power and fertility around your neck, what kind of woman is going to respect you? That is why I have teamed up with Medallion Man, the shop for medallion needs. Medallion Man caters to all levels of masculinity. For the strong, silent type, a medallion the size of a hubcap will say everything that needs to be said. Even singing medallions for the Casanova, who knows music is the food of love. Model trains, dollhouses, diapers, whatever your interest, we've got a medallion for you. Don't forget, every woman knows if you can't support a medallion, you can't support a family.
This is the sound of a space clock aboard a U.S. satellite 180 miles above the Earth. No one winds up this timepiece. It's powered by a tiny battery, a battery that delivers power for years without replacement. Now the same type of battery, the Duracell battery, can bring new reliability and long life to your battery-operated equipment. Radios, cameras, toys, all run far longer. Duracell batteries, the long-distance power cells, outlast any ordinary battery. The same type of battery that keeps space clocks running for years can bring long life to anything powered by batteries. Dura, as in durable. Cell, as in power cell. The Duracell battery, made by Mallory.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from Talkstream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now, the Paranormal Radio app, free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
Switch to DCS ranging.
240, nominal to profile.
We're in the pipe. 5 by 5.
Tonight on Paranormal Soup, our guest is Dr. Bruce Olav Solheim. He was born on September 3rd, 1958 in Seattle, Washington, to hardworking Norwegian immigrant parents. Bruce was the first person in his family to go to college. He served for 6 years in the U.S. Army as a jail guard and later as a helicopter pilot. He earned his Ph.D. in history from Bowling Green State University in 1993. Bruce is currently a distinguished professor of history at the Citrus College of Glendora, California. He also served as a Fulbright professor in 2003 at the University of Tromsø in northern Norway. He just begun teaching a paranormal personal history class, or paranormal personal history course at the Citrus College in the fall of 2018. Bruce founded the Veterans Program at Citrus College and co-founded with Manuel Martinez and Junior D. Villa Rose the Boots to Books Transition Course, the first college course in the United States designed specifically for recently returned veterans. He's published 8 books and he's written 10 plays, two of which have been produced. Bruce is married to Ginger, the girl of his dreams, who is a professional helicopter pilot and certified flight instructor. He has been blessed with 4 wonderful children, Bjorn, Brian, Caitlin, and Leaf. He also has a precious grandson, Liam. I got a son named Liam. Bruce, his brother, and 2 nephews still on the family home in Norway, 200 miles above the Arctic Circle. You can go to Bruce's website, bruceolavsolheim.com. You can find his books on Amazon. We have the links in the description of the show. And we're going to get into a lot of topics tonight on the paranormal. Tonight, if you want to talk about your own personal paranormal experience, it's definitely a good show to call in for that. We'd love to hear those stories. And you got Bruce and myself, who have had, obviously, a lot of paranormal experiences. We might be able to relate to you. So we'll get those phone lines out to you in a little bit. You can call in probably after the second commercial break. But let's go ahead and get to our guest. How you doing tonight, Bruce?
Good. How are you, Jason?
Doing great. I gave a brief description of you, but I didn't know if you wanted to start out tonight telling the audience a little bit more about yourself and how this all started for you. I think if I from what I'm reading from your book, it started from a very early age.
Yeah, that was quite a biography there. It started at age 4 and in northern Norway, and the house that where my dad was born, my sister was born. It's over 120 years old, this house. And my first experience was an angelic experience, so it was a good experience. It was a healing experience, and that's what really opened the doors for me. What happened is that I suddenly became ill, and my body was stiff, and I couldn't move my head from side to side. My neck was stiff, and my grandmother and my father and my mother thought that I was coming down with they thought it was polio.
Yeah, as I say, that time period.
That's what it said, and the relatives were coming over and saying, that's probably what it was. But in the middle of the night, I was cried myself to sleep, and I woke up and I saw an angelic presence in the ceiling, and what it did is it just gave me this incredible feeling that nothing was going to be bad, nothing bad would happen to me, that I was going to be healed, and from that point on, I fell back to sleep, and when I woke up in the morning, I was totally fine. So it was a healing experience, and my mother said it was my guardian angel. That's what my grandmother said. And so from that point on, stuff started happening. And so that was age 4, and it's been happening to me probably every day of my life, or since then. I'm now 60, so.
People are like age 4, it's so young. I know my paranormal experiences, or some of the craziest stuff I saw, was like 4 or 5 years old. Mm-hmm. It's what I remember more than anything, because it seared into my brain. When I was 4 or 5, I saw a green floating head, and I don't remember a lot from being 4 or 5, but I never forgot that. So right. When you saw this angelic being, what did you see? What did it look like?
Well, it was just a very bright light. It's not like I saw really distinct features, although I know it had some type of features. And the main thing was that it was warm, and it made me feel like everything was going to be okay. And I stopped crying, and I fell asleep. And that was the main thing. I just knew that it was something very, very good. And my mother had confirmed it in the morning. So did my grandmother. And it was a good one to start off with, because I've had some bad paranormal experiences too.
Well, I think too, it sets the story for you, and probably for the rest of your life, mm-hmm. is your parents and grandparents accepting of it.
And especially my mom. My mom was very psychic, so we had a special connection. And I think this type of stuff gets handed down from generation to generation. Her mother was a healer and a herbalist. And I should say that this island that we have this house on, you mentioned it was 200 miles above the Arctic Circle. There's no hospitals on that island, so it's a very remote place. So a lot of the people who were healers were, prized in the 1800s and before. Our lineage goes all the way back to the Viking age there on that island. But so I got that from my mother. My mother and I had a special connection. And a lot of the things that happened to me when I was younger, I could talk to my mom about it. My dad was more skeptical. He was a very practical carpenter, blue-collar guy.
Dads usually are.
Yeah, and, my mom and I could read cards. We could read each other's minds with cards pretty accurately. And we'd do it until my dad got upset and told us to stop.
That's awesome, though. That's the great childhood.
A wink and a nod, and I knew that, she knew that we had gone far enough for Dad.
See, but that, to me, people are think that's weird to do that kind of stuff with your kids. Like, I was just talking to my wife. My son just had his first grade, had a science fair project. And I'm like, for 3 years, there's going to be another one we have to do. Like, we are going to totally do, the psychic, what's the name of the card test?
I forgot what.
I totally forgot the name of the cards, but you know what I'm talking about. We would do that and, chart it all out and show how we do it and see if we get a beyond 50-50 chance, and do that as a science fair project. Because he asked me all kinds of questions about this stuff. We're totally open about it in my family. My mom was pretty open too. But I think that makes a difference why maybe me and you have had so many experiences. I don't know. Because I've had them all since I was 4.
I think that's part. I think everybody has to a degree, and it's just it's something that we don't value as much, or a lot of the mainstream society doesn't value as much as in ancient times when that was absolutely required. You have to have people using those types of skills to survive, and modern society is kind of beaten that out of us. And of course, when we go to school, and I would share my fanciful stories and what they thought were lies or made up or whatever were actually true, and then finally you just say, I'm not going to tell those stories anymore, or maybe they aren't true.
But you stop paying attention to it.
It's
kids stop paying attention to
it. The children and their imaginations and their actual experiences. I think children are very naturally psychic, and that kind of gets beaten out of them in society. And when you go to work and you go to, well, especially universities or colleges where that's very questionable type stuff. People who talk about it and which could be driven out of the profession, which was something I was worried about. Why it took me so long to write the book. I was afraid of the reaction by my peers, by the college administration, and I even had one graduate student who I was kind of advising, a friend, the daughter of a friend of mine, and she told her mother, well, I think he's just committed academic suicide by writing that book, even though she enjoyed the book. But she said, so there is that fear, but I haven't found any of that. In fact, my colleagues have been very accepting, and the administration allows me to teach a paranormal course. So that shows you that it's not, they're not retiring me right away. Anyway.
I actually took a paranormal course through Purdue North Central at the time. Had the guy ended up being kind of my mentor in the paranormal field. Mike McDowell started a ghost hunting group in Indiana back in the 90s. They let him teach a course there as extracurricular class in paranormal investigation, and then it was also an audio analysis. So I mean, the ghost. I hate so many ghost hunting shows, but in a way, a lot of those helped, I think, get a little more acceptance, a little more awareness.
Sure.
A little bit.
Sure. I think I do watch them. I watch them with my youngest son. We like to watch them together.
Me and my mom watched.
And I know that part of it is there's a little bit of sensationalism and drama thrown in there, but this stuff is real. So I mean, the thing is that the general public is kind of inoculated or whatever. They think, well, if it's going to be real, it has to be like Harry Potter kind of stuff. Yeah. Instead of maybe it's not going to be that dramatic, but it doesn't make it less real. And I know you're mentioning in one of the science articles, it's always this micro kind of stuff, but I mean, that is where scientists like Dean Radin at the Institute of Noetic Sciences, he's showing that micro PK is a real thing. It's been replicated. I mean, it really, but we're not like throwing buses across a street or something.
I remember the Russian case, the woman in Russia. I can't think of her name, and if I did, I would butcher it. But it was in the 50s? During the whole communist spy or Cold War psychic, both we're doing our own dark projects with psychic, and the Russians were, and they had this lady. You could see her move stuff. You stop a heart of a frog, but she said it was painful, and it like shot up her spine. Like she had to like focus everything. It looked like it was like not healthy, but it was documented. She could do it. And
so that's more in the realm of what they would call macro PK, things where you can see rather than at a micro level where you have to measure it with fine instruments and so forth. I just remember the name of those cards. I think they're called Zener cards.
Zener cards, you were right. Thank you.
Yeah.
It was going to drive me nuts until you said
the little wavy
like
lines and the star and all that stuff.
Zener cards. Yeah, I thought, man, that
it was
bugging
cool
me
too.
Project.
Why can't I remember them?
So I'm gonna get the weird looks at the science fair in 3 years when we do that. But
I think it's great.
I think my son will be up for it because he wants to do it. He wants to. I need to get a pack of those cards again because he totally wants. He's like I compare it to him like he's a big Star Wars fan. All the Jedis and what they're able to do, and I'm trying to teach him talk about meditation. And I compare it to Star Wars. This is my best way to reach his little mind to give him an idea of what I'm talking about.
Well, that is a great. It is a great vehicle for understanding this idea of the Force. I think, and also. The dark side too. It's important to know that as well. That it exists.
You talked about your first experience being, seeing an angel. I mean, on the reverse side of that is their demons. Have you experienced the demonic?
Yeah, unfortunately, there have been a couple of experiences that were in my books. I also had a recent experience in Chicago, and maybe if we get time, I'll talk about that. But
that's right around my doorstep.
The first, demonic thing was I was 18 years old, living in my brother's garage at a very low point in my life.
Yes.
Every time you hear of anybody having some kind of demonic stuff, it's always when you're most vulnerable.
Yes.
And I had a terrible experience. I'd fallen asleep. I had fought with my girlfriend, broken up with her, whatever. You know, it was a daily drama with me, you know. But all of a sudden, I was awake, and this column of fire appeared at the foot of my mattress that was lying on this concrete floor. And it went in an arc up over my head. And
it's just like flames?
Like a column of fire, you know, like a tube, but it was like, you know, a column of fire. And it was, you know, roaring, you know, very loud. And there was like this demonic voice, this very growly voice with it saying stuff in a language I didn't understand. And it kind of paralyzed me. I was just like paralyzed in fear. And I don't know how long it lasted. It lasted maybe a minute, maybe 5 minutes, maybe a half an hour. I don't know. But, you know, I kept like slapping myself, pinching myself, trying to, okay, I'm not dreaming this. And, I'm not exactly sure why it happened, and it did stop eventually. And I just assumed because of the growly voice and the fire that it was some kind of demonic thing. And I know there was a neighborhood witch in our neighborhood, because every old neighborhood in those days had a neighborhood witch. And she was this old lady, and I had crossed through her about a couple days before that. I had crossed through her yard. And which I did, you know, even though I was 18, I was still acting like I was 10. You know, I crossed through people's yards, jumped over their fences, because who wants to walk on the street? You know, that's not any fun.
That's what 18-year-olds do.
Yeah, exactly. I was, you know, still doing that. So I did that, and it was late at night. And then I was walking past her house, and I saw something in the window, and I looked there, and there she was. And she was a very scary-looking old lady. She had like this white hair that was all matted and kind of going off in all directions, and she had this large cancerous, ulcerous kind of thing on her nose, and, you know, just a typical kind of, you know, witchy looking lady. And she had this candle in a little candle holder, and she was looking in the window at me, and I just froze like a deer in the headlights. And so I was frozen, but then I ran really quick after that. It happened a couple days after that. I don't know if it had anything to do with that. You know, if she had cursed me or whatever, but I remember telling my girlfriend, I called her the next morning, and she said, "Why are you calling me?" And we broke up, and I said, "Well, I had this thing happen to me." And she said, "Come on over." And I came over, and she said, "Well, maybe we ought to call a psychiatrist. What do you think?" You know, and I said, "Forget it. It didn't happen. Don't worry about it." And that's when I got my first indication that maybe it's not always a good idea to share these things. You know,
it's like, just kidding.
Yeah, so that was the first one, and there've been a couple. But it's a very, probably a scarier one even, was in the Army.
This is the one where you made the demon's head.
Yeah, I made a demon's head, and that was really dumb. And the lesson there is don't play around with stuff you don't understand.
Yeah.
And especially when you're actually fashioning something that represents something very evil, which I knew it was. But I was doing it what I thought was a good purpose, because I was trying to scare this guy who was going after my girlfriend at the time. I thought, well, that was a good reason to kind of freak him out or whatever. And the thing, as I had put a candle by it to try to make it as freaky as I could, and I was looking at it, and the thing started to talk. Its lips, it was made out of clay, and its lips started to move and saying horrible things. And when my girlfriend came back into her room, because her roommate had let me in, she looked at it, and she said, "What is that thing?" And I said, "Well, I made this to scare, you know, whatever the guy's name was." And she said, "You know, I made something like that, look just like that, when I was in high school, and you know, this thing is possessed. I mean, this is it's a real thing." And I said, "Yeah, its lips moved and everything." And she grabs it, and she opens the window, and she throws it out into the dumpster out of the window from her room.
Well, didn't you get it from like a book, like you?
I was
a book
looking
on
at a
demons.
demonology book, and I was in you know, like for GIs, for soldiers, they have like these rec centers, and they had like a ceramics room there, and so that's where I made it. And the guy was kind of a freaky guy who was there, because he came up and recognized which demon it was, you know. He was like, "I'm into demonology," and so it was a very strange thing. And that yeah, that was kind of that was very frightening.
It seemed like there was a lot of like people into stuff like that on that base. Now that base was old World War II.
Yeah, there were Nazis. We were in Nazi barracks. There was even swastikas some places, you know, and so I think it was kind of a haunted building. At the very least, it's just, you know, bad vibes, you know, to be in old Nazi barracks. And I think there was SS. They were SS too, so it wasn't like just the normal, you know, like infantry guys. It was like the worst of the worst guys, you know.
Well, one guy, you had the one guy that was like practicing black magic or something, right?
Yeah,
that's what started
the counselor.
all this.
Yeah, counselor. Yeah, he was a counselor at the a therapist supposedly at the prison, you know, and he didn't know he was doing this kind of black magic, you know. He just thought, well, I'm doing kind of gray magic, and
well, he might have known. He's just telling you it's gray magic.
Yeah, he wanted to see his room, so we go in there, and he's got the upside down pentagram and a goat's head and the upside down cross, and I go,
just a little magic.
This is not gray. This is about as black magic as you can get. So yeah, there was a lot of, you know, I didn't write about it in the book, but I also met a guy who belonged to the KKK there too. So it was a very strange place. I'd never met a Klansman before because I'm from Seattle. I assume there were Klansmen in Seattle, but I never met any. But I met one in the army in Germany. So
yeah, in a Nazi barrack. That's a great place. Bad mojo.
Yeah,
bad mojo.
Very bad mojo. Exactly. Yeah. And recently, I haven't written about it yet. It's going to be in my third book, but I was in Chicago, and this is another lesson learned. Even though I should have learned a lot of lessons, I'm still learning lessons at age 60. And this guy, after hearing me, I was on Coast to Coast, and a lot of people called me and you know, got a hold of me. And some people were, you know, rather interesting, off the wall people, and other people very, you know, very serious people. This one guy is a TV and a producer. And he has this idea for a show, and he said, I'd like to, you know, bring you out to Chicago and test you, you know, your mediumship, you know, because he heard that I did mediumship. And he said, yeah, I'm looking for somebody to do this show. And he had this concept. I'm not going to go into the concept, but anyway, he just wanted to do like a screen test for it. So he flew me and my wife out to Chicago, and he took me to various places the first day. You know, like a haunted farm and you know, interesting kind of places, but not too, you know, a graveyard. It wasn't too scary. It was, you know, I picked up on stuff. But the next day, the first place he took me to, it was in South Side of Chicago, and he took me there, and I didn't know what it was. The only clue he gave me is that, yeah, this is kind of dark here. This is kind of a dark location. So I just looked around. It was an Aldi's parking lot, you know. So I figured out how dark can an Aldi's parking lot be.
I already have a guess where he took you.
The post office on the other side. You know the place I'm talking about?
I know exactly I know where he took you. Yeah.
So yeah, it turned out that it was the site of the murder hotel, H.H. Holmes, the original mass murderer. Probably 200 people. The dude killed.
We've had his ancestor on here, Jeff Mudgett, as a guest before.
Oh really? Oh, Mudgett. Okay, yeah, because that was his real name. Yeah. But anyway, so when I was in the alleyway that connected the Aldi's to the, you know, where the murder hotel was, I was physically and psychically attacked. And I think because I was blindsided, that, you know, this guy was trying to get footage and trying to get it, you know, like the paranormal shows are.
Yeah.
And I got blindsided, and I wasn't protected. I was, you know, kind of like walking with my radar open. Oh, look at me, here I am, you know. And I got pushed down and held down by a very evil entity. And I started, you know, I was describing what I was seeing. I didn't know what it was yet, you know, but I said, there's people underground, there's people being killed, lots of people being killed. I can't get up, you know, and I'm a big guy, and it takes a lot to keep me down. And eventually, and the worst part was that I felt like completely helpless and hopeless, like there's no hope. And I felt like my trust has been betrayed, you know. That was the worst feeling, other than the physical pain, because I was injured from the thing too. But eventually I worked myself back up, and then later he told me what it was, and I said, don't ever take me to anything like that again. You know, that's
he took you probably to the worst spot in the Chicago's history.
Yeah, you don't take people who are sensitives and intuitives and psychic mediums and let them be wide open and blindside them like that. He said that's very dangerous, and I was physically hurt from it too. And really, that was the only time I've ever been physically injured. from a psychic paranormal experience, but where the entity, whatever it was, actually injured me. But so that was very frightening. It had a very big effect on me, and it kind of had lingering effects. I had to go see a friend of mine who's a shaman, which is a whole other story, but she had helped me kind of work through that, which, I believe in the old ways, and I think that she knows what she's doing, and I was able to get rid of those attachments that had kind of hung on from Chicago. But anyway, so so those are the kind of demonic stuff. But that's interesting. You had who was his grandson, his great grandson?
Yeah, Jeff Mudgett. They did a one season on I think it was History Channel. Because Jeff Mudgett's theory is that H.H. Holmes was also Jack the Ripper.
Yeah, I've heard that too.
Yeah, and he had a lot of convincing evidence of it. Really, really, I loved the show that he had. It was a lot of convincing evidence, and I've always been fascinated by Holmes. They're supposed to be doing a movie. But, yeah, if you're going to take a psychic and not tell them where to go, that's not a place just to drop on you. Because, the horrific things that had to have gone down there. I mean, there are more than 100 people, they believe, he did in there. I mean, in horrible ways. And when you talked about being... you couldn't get up. I mean, the typical way most of those people died was by gas.
Suffocating. Yeah.
Suffocating.
I kind of felt like I was just giving up, like you're just about to black out and just giving up. You've given up all hope. And then the fact that he was a doctor, too, which, he would lure people with trust. I mean, when you go to see a doctor, you don't expect they're going to suffocate you or kill you, right? So, there was that factor of betrayal there, too. But didn't he, when he was in prison, he said he was starting to look like Satan, or at least he said that he was, or something. It was a pretty interesting story.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, he called himself the devil, but they say that they compare some of his writings to the Jack the Ripper letters, too.
Yeah.
There's some similarities, and that's what my wife always is concerned. Besides, me and my wife share one interest really a lot, and that's the paranormal. When we met, we're lucky to have that relationship. But the one interest she doesn't share with me that I have, that she doesn't understand, is my interest in serial killers, and it's because it's because they are the epitome of evil. I've seen spiritual evil. I was attacked by, we'll get into it, maybe I'll ask your experience on this, by a shadow person experience. But human evil is the scariest to me. And, I don't know if you saw the newest Ted Bundy Netflix docuseries they did. And there's one point where they talk about, in the interview tapes, that Ted's eyes would go black. He had blue eyes. His eyes would go black, and he would take on, like, when he'd get into it, like a different form, he was like a different person. And you always wonder how much the role of the supernatural plays into these evil men, that really have no soul.
I can tell you this, Jason, I used to work as a jail guard. I worked in Germany at the military prison, and I guarded a guy who was on death row. He was going to go to Fort Leavenworth and be on death row. I guarded people that had murdered several people in Germany, and I also guarded murderers at the maximum security prison at Oak Park Heights in Minnesota. And I can tell you that all of these mass murderer types, almost all of them had demonic tattoos. Every single one of them. It's like they're marked. And I'm thinking, if you want to be a serial murderer, I think one requirement is probably you got to go get a bunch of demonic tattoos. But they weren't just like regular. I mean, my dad had a tattoo of a sailing ship. I'm not talking about regular tattoos.
Right, but it was actual demonic symbols.
Very scary, frightening ones. So they all had that in common. And the thing about you talking about black eyes, I think what it can look that way. In Minnesota, I had to do strip searches of these guys, and I hated it. Of course, they hate it, but I hated it too.
No guy enjoys stripping another guy. I hope. Well, some do, and that's all right if they do. But most,
some do,
and that's fine.
Maybe, but I didn't enjoy it. But anyway, so
you can strip right there, buddy.
This guy looks
that's the guy that enjoys it.
Well, yeah, and then you got to bend over, and it's horrible. Yeah, it's the worst thing. Bend over and spread them. Yeah, that's the worst. But this guy looked at me and he said, "You don't know who I am, do you?" And I just started there at Oak Park Heights. And I said, "No." And he said, "Well, I killed my whole family. I killed, probably 10, 20, probably 50, at least a dozen more people that they don't know about." And he was looking at me, and I looked in his eyes, which is a very terrible thing to do. and there was nothing there. I mean, it was like, it was, you know, how you look at a normal person and you can see their humanity, the soul of whatever you can see there. There was nothing there. It was just like an empty pit. And I'm thinking,
I've seen that.
Whether they're blue eyes, brown eyes, there's just nothing there. There is definitely something different about them, something missing. And the thing is, they can be very nice, and then a second later they can kill you, and it doesn't even make a difference to them. That's how they're soulless in a way. I think is what it is.
That's what's always intriguing.
While killing you.
Yeah.
So I understand the fascination. Having worked with these people, that was enough for me. So.
Well, one of the reasons I probably got more fascinated in it is I mentioned I had a shadow person experience.
Yeah.
And it was a 4-month period, 4 to 5 months of being attacked by this thing. And this thing tried to get in my head. Mm-hmm. And when it did, it wanted me to do bad things.
Yeah.
And I am a good person. It didn't work. But there are people out there that maybe not, they're born not so great, or they have a problem and they're weaker. And these things can affect and take over and control. Sure. And I've always had that dark suspicion that some of these serial killers, and I hate to say it, active shooters, and some of these might be influenced by something from the other side. Because I experienced something I don't think was a human soul. It was an entity, a non-human entity that I don't even classify as demonic. It was something alien to me that affected me. And it's like, from then on, I think that's one of my, I think I was fascinated with serial killers before that, if I be honest, but I really got fascinated in that idea. And I guess that's what I'm always searching for in this, these evil acts. Is there some other supernatural force behind these people to do that? Or maybe it's just worse. There's just the sickness of humanity. I don't know.
It's very interesting. I think that it's very important to know that these things exist, because you don't want to be, ignorant of the fact that there is this really dark force out there, whether it's had been human at one point or maybe never human, and it's good to have a defense against it. And I think it sounds like you shook it off, which is good. And the only way they can really get to you is if you pay too much attention to them and invite them. And if you invite them and pay too much attention to them, if you become, maybe a little obsessed, then they can find an inroad, because they'll just sit and wait and hang on you until there's an opportunity, because they're opportunists, like all predators, and then they'll pounce. And then once they get a grip on you, you got to do some serious work to get rid of them. And, that's where it's good to, do these kind of spiritual cleansings and whatever. I always tell people, have some kind of spiritual thing, whatever it is. I don't really care what it is. If you believe in God, that's fine. If you don't, something else. Nature, spirits, whatever, just do something to cleanse yourself of this stuff, because these things glom onto you and they grip onto you and they just wear you down and really interfere with your life. And it's amazing once you clear those things away. It's especially people who deal in what we deal with. It's very important to take those times to as we say in the Army, clean out your headgear.
Yeah.
Very, very important, because we deal with a lot of stuff. We deal with good stuff, and interesting and funny stuff, but also some of that dark stuff. And we have to every once in a while cleanse ourselves of that. So it's very important.
I know I invited it upon myself. I totally did. I was 17 and stupid, or 17 when I really stuck my nose into it. And now I'm older and wouldn't do anything like that. But I gave it the power. I really did. And for me, it was divine intervention that kind of saved me from it, but it was also realization that it fed off my fear. It's everything it did. It was feeding off my fear.
Fear and anguish and hopelessness and murder and mayhem, and just that they just revel in that. It's where they get all their energy. That's what sustains them. And if they can't get it from you, they'll transfer to somebody else or something else. And that's why a lot of people, when you see these paranormal shows, people go into these very dark places and intentionally try to stir things up. And maybe they're braver than me or something, but I wouldn't really intentionally, go into any of these things. I'm not a psychic investigator or whatever. So, but I am very sensitive, so I know they exist, and these things are all around us, and I avoid places like that. I try to avoid.
If that guy would have told you, hey, let's go to where the murder castle was,
yeah,
would you have said no?
I would have said no, or I would have been so
more
prepared.
Protected. Yeah,
and I would, as my friend Simeon Hines says, I would have made sure my aperture was much smaller, because my aperture was wide open, because I wanted to. And part of it was my own fault. It was kind of greedy. It's like, you get a TV producer and say, hey, we want to make a show, and you go, hey, this is my big shot, right? So I'm just being honest. That greed was the in, for this kind of a negative thing.
Yeah.
So I was there trying to impress this TV guy, not thinking, man, I'm putting myself in, I don't know what this is. It's dark. That's all I know. And the aperture was wide open, and bam.
It's like sticking a stick into a dark cave. You don't know if you're going to poke a bear or a bee's nest or what.
You don't know what's in there. It's bad. There's something bad in there, but you don't know how big it is, how bad it is. But I wouldn't have had my aperture that open. If he would have said this is the murder castle site, I would have had my aperture very small and just pick up. Like when I first sensed a guy in a hat with a weird mustache and gold clothes and horses and carriages, I would have said, okay, I don't really like this, because I got a bad feeling already just at that point.
When you were there, I have to ask, were you there? Did you get a flash of Holmes?
Well, that's who I think was staring at me, because I saw all this movement. There's a lot of movement, very kinetic. There was horses and like carriages and stuff, and people in dark clothing. Like from that period, from the late 1800s. And then there was one guy that was not moving. He was just looking at me. And he had a long coat, and he had the funny mustache and a bowler hat, and he was just looking at me. And I didn't like the looks of him.
I get the chills just thinking about that too.
Everything else is moving. Everything else is moving. It's just life. And then there's this one guy just there, just staring at me. And I didn't take the warning. There should have been a lot of red flags on that trip. But anyway, so that was my experience. So I think the lesson is that you got to make sure you got to protect yourself. And you got to every once in a while cleanse yourself when you deal with stuff we deal with.
What was it for you that started it? Because you have a lot of paranormal experiences. What was it for you that started making you wonder, or know you're actually communicating with spirit?
Well, I can. There was one in my first book I write about a family friend, old Norwegian man that had passed away. I think I was maybe 19 years old when he passed away. And I had a lot of experiences before that, but we went to his funeral. It was the first open casket funeral I'd ever been to, and that's for anybody. That's quite a mind-blowing experience. So, and I liked this guy. He was a nice guy, and I was sitting there next to my mom, and all of a sudden I heard his voice, and he said, "Don't worry, it'll be okay. Don't be afraid." But he was in his Norwegian accent. It was his voice. Yeah. It wasn't some ethereal voice, mysterious.
But you're hearing it with your ears. You're hearing it with your ears.
I was hearing it. Well, I didn't know if it was inside of my head or my ears. I looked around. My mom was sitting next to me, and she just smiled at me. And I don't know. I didn't ask her if she heard it too, but she just smiled at me. And then he kept talking. And he said, "Don't be afraid. I'm okay. Everything is okay. Don't be afraid." So that was as clear as you and I are talking right now. I mean, that's how clear I heard it. And I knew for sure that this thing was getting stronger in me, whatever this ability to connect with things. And I wasn't even trying to connect. I was just in the situation. And they say that people that pass on like to attend their own funerals. I mean, a lot of psychics will tell you that, and mediums. They'll say they love to. I mean, who wouldn't? If you could watch what people are doing. Hey, that person's not grieving enough.
Unless a lot of people are coming there to talk crap.
Yeah,
then you might want to just skip this.
About their personal business. Hey, how about me? I'm the dead guy. So it makes sense that he would have said something, because I liked him, he liked me, and so he was a good guy, funny guy, and that was a very profound experience. And I didn't really, I went on to do a lot of things, the Army, worked at Boeing, academics, all that. So I just kind of put this all in the back burner, all this paranormal stuff. It kept happening. And I kept writing stuff down, but I didn't ever think I'd publish it. And then 2 years ago, well, almost 3 years ago, a friend of mine died, and he came to me in a very clear vision and told me, you gotta tell the stories now. Now's the time. And he even gave me the name of the book. He said, Timeless. And I said, what do you mean timeless? And he said, well, here in the spirit world, There is no future. There's no past. It's just the eternal now. We are timeless. We are all timeless. And when you leave this physical world, you'll come where I am, and it's a beautiful thing. And he told me how beautiful it was and wonderful. And I communicate with him probably a couple times a week. Whenever I take what I call my meditative walks, I communicate with him. But that's what kind of made me say, okay, now I'm gonna take the chance. I'm gonna write this book. And I'm very glad I did. It's kind of a spiritual reawakening, I would say. It's not that it ever went away, but it just became so profound that I need to do this. This is a change in my life. I mean, I've been teaching and taking care of my children and my family for all these years, and now this is something I have to focus on a lot more. And I knew I always wanted to, but I didn't have the opportunity. And frankly, I was afraid. Like I said, I was afraid of the reaction. And and I get some negative reaction, these internet trolls, and stuff.
Yeah. I've had people in my face call me a liar, not just the internet trolls. I've had people just straight up to my face call me a liar, talking about my experiences.
And it's horrible. And I feel, and it's not that I like people to be skeptical. I think that's healthy, but to just totally deny that there's any possibility and call you a liar or call you a fraud or whatever when they don't even really know you. I think that is horrible, and they're really, I think, afraid. I think that's where it's coming from.
That's exactly what it's coming from.
Yeah,
from them.
It's a lot of
I know it is. They don't want to believe it, and I've gotten some of them admit it. I'm like, you don't want to believe it because if it is true what I'm saying, then you're scared.
Yeah.
I mean, but that's why I do this show.
I had one guy that said, well, if you talk to the dead, you hear voices and stuff. Yeah. Well, that's really schizophrenia. Did you know that? And I said, I was going to ask him, are you a psychiatrist or what?
Right.
Yeah. So, but there is that, that element to it, that there are people who are going to be very negative, and it could be your employer too. So that's why I was a little nervous about the college, but nobody was more surprised than me when I threw the idea out there. Hey, can I teach a paranormal class? Maybe. What do you think? Yeah. Oh yeah, sure. We'll get it approved. It had to go all the way to the board of trustees, and who are not people who make frivolous decisions.
Right.
So there is some support, there for it, and I think people are hungry for it. You know that with your show, people are hungry for this information, and they want to know more, and they want a safe environment, to learn more. And so I teach this class. I get people, young and old, mostly older people, but I get some young people too, and they all come in there with stories. They want a place, like one gentleman says, I can't talk to anybody in my family about this, but I can talk to you. I can talk to these other students. And, and they can watch shows like yours, and that gives them an outlet. It gives them an opportunity to share these very important parts of their life that they can't otherwise share and cultivate and learn from.
Well, I like I always say, I do the show so people have a forum, a place, an open place to freely be able to talk about this stuff. But it's also selfish reason people too, because I need an outlet to talk about this stuff because I drive people nuts around me if I don't.
Exactly.
My question is why isn't more people asking these questions or wondering about these things? To me, this is about the ultimate end of where things are all going to end. The other side. Yeah. We're all going there, people. Aren't you a little bit concerned about what that might be? Aren't you curious?
It's kind of a denial. People, the biggest fear is talking in public, right? As they say, that's number one fear. And number two fear is death. So here we are talking about the dead in public, right? So that's like putting all the fears together. And so rather than be paralyzed by fear and live your life so fearful, why not just embrace the fact that, yes, that we will die and it's okay. And that's the message of my book, is that, we're going to be okay because we live on. We are timeless. Like my friend Gene said, he reassured me, that he is fine. And I shared that message with his sister and his mother, and they were very happy to hear from him, Well, and that brings up something interesting. You have to be careful that the people you tell, are going to accept it, especially relatives. You don't want to go up to somebody and say, "Hey, I talked to your, your dad, and he said, I know he died last year. Very sorry about that. And by the way, here's what he told you." You have to be very careful that
you might get punched in the face.
They could get very upset and very like it is the ultimate intrusion if you think about it. You know, they're opening their feelings, their emotions, and their sense of place in the world. And like some people just say that's it. There is nothing more, and then you come to and say, well, no, there is something more, and here's what they want to tell you. So you have to be very careful that they're accepting of it. But sometimes the spirits are very insistent. You need to contact them, and I've told them. It's not that I argue with the spirits, but I'll say, well, maybe I need to ease it on. Maybe I can ease it in a little bit. Like, hey, I do this kind of mediumship thing. That's what I told one person. To hope that they would then, oh, well, could you help? But it works sometimes. Other times they don't get the hint, or they're just afraid.
Yeah.
And I have to respect that. And that's what I tell the spirits that contact me. I say, I don't think they're ready yet. You're ready, but I don't think they're ready. But as soon as they're ready, I will do whatever you want me to do to help them understand what you want to get across. So
I've had some mediumistic experiences where I've done some things where totally I'm like naming a spirit, like without having any knowledge, saying their first and last name. I mean, I've had those experiences, but I've like stepped away. Like I don't want to go down that road because I couldn't imagine trying to approach people and deal with that, talk about that. Like, hey, so and so's here, wants to talk to you. Like passed on. And usually, if they're coming through from the other side, it's because they gotta settle some stuff, with somebody sometimes too. And sometimes it's not pretty. I've watched my medium friends go through this readings and that. Sometimes it's not very pretty stuff.
No, and I've had spirits that I've sensed something. I said, you sound very depressed and very sad, and they tell me, well, this is, but don't tell my relatives. Don't tell them that I feel this way. And this is when the living person has asked me to contact, in this case, their father. And I did, and I didn't get very positive information. So then you're in kind of a dilemma. Like you have the living person wants to know what they're thinking. So I have to respect what the dead person said in the spirit world. Don't tell them everything. You tell them some stuff, but don't tell them everything. So I have to respect that. Otherwise, you don't want the spirits being upset with you, about this intimacy that you're trying. They call it a medium because you're in the middle. I mean, it's it's like
don't kill the messenger.
I'm a bridge. I'm a bridge builder. I build a bridge between the living and those that have passed on. And so you can get yourself into some, it's good to talk to other people who've been doing it for a living, especially the people that do it for a living, who do thousands of these things, because they've run into everything, so it's good to get their advice about it. Even though I don't do it for a living, I just do it, for my own self and for my friends and family and whoever asks me. I don't do it for money. But you can still learn a lot from those professionals that do this all the time, just because of the volume that they handle.
Well, yeah, if you're gonna get somebody that's like, "What does Dad think about me? Have I accomplished a lot?" And you talk to Dad, and he's like, "They're totally screwing their life up, man." You have to break it to them, or tell them the information.
You have to be honest, so you have to spin it in a way. And not spin's not the right word.
That's a good word.
In a way, like maybe you need to try a little bit harder in this area or something, just, encourage them, empower them to do better, that kind of thing. Rather than
because if mom or dad were overcritical in life, they're probably just the same in the afterlife.
They are. If they're funny in real life, they're funny in the afterlife. To give you an example, at a graveyard I was at, one of the spirits talked to me, and it was actually in Chicago, but it wasn't a bad experience. It was in a graveyard, and I was complaining to the camera guy, the producer guy. Said, "Man, it is really cold." I mean, it was like below zero when I was there. And somebody, one of the deceased, said, "You think that's cold? Try being dead." And I thought, that is funny. That's a funny joke, So they do have a sense of humor, and it comes through. It's pretty cool.
Now, when spirit comes to you, like when your friend came to you, I mean, how do they communicate? Do you see them, or is it in the mind's eye? Because I have friends that it's different for a lot of people.
It is different. It depends on what your strengths are. And for me, I did see my friend. I saw him, like I was watching a movie, and I could hear him in my head. And sometimes the spirit will just show me symbols. Like one time I saw a pipe with smoke coming out of it. This lady had asked me to contact her dead husband, and I saw a pipe with smoke, and I saw the color green, and that had great significance for her, but I didn't see his face. You know, I heard a little bit of what he was saying. Sometimes I just see like I'll ask a question and the spirit will answer in script, which is kind of interesting. It's called textual mediumship, where you see and to me, it's always in gold handwriting, kind of handwritten, you know, like whatever you call cursive, you know.
Yeah.
I don't write cursive, so I always block print, but and it comes across, you know, I'll see the yes written like that, or no way, or
it's just like you like close your eyes and you see it like in your mind's eye, or
I don't even have to close my eyes. I just see it in my mind's eye.
Your mind's eye.
I see it out in front of me, in my, you know, in my peripheral, or in my, you know, I mean, the spirit world is right here with us. It's like there was somebody wrote a book. I said, heaven is only 3 feet away, you know, something like that. This idea that the spirit world is all around us. These people are all around us. You know, they're not always necessarily available, but they are all around us. They might be doing other things, but we have access to it all the time. But there are portals. You know, you've probably dealt with that in your show quite a bit. And I have a particular one. I can't do sitting meditation because I'm too, you know, I got to move.
Yeah, I hear you.
So I found that I can do walking meditation. Yeah. So I get into the zone. I ask for protection from my spirit guides. I open up the aperture with their protection. It's very important to have protection because you don't know who's going to come crashing through that door. So you got to be very careful. So you have to have, I have a protector who's kind of like he's like a big strong man. You know, he has kind of like a chiseled, like a Native American face. You know, I call him Ozzy.
He's like your guardian angel.
Man. He's the bouncer for me. I said, okay, don't let
That's a good way to
anybody
describe your guardian angels. They're the bouncers.
She's one of them, yeah. And then the other one is my guardian angel. I call her Theodora. She's more of an angelic type, but the other one's a strong, silent type. But anyway, so I got 2 of them, and they control who comes in. But sometimes I'll hear the voice. Sometimes I'll see things. Sometimes I'll see the person's face very clearly. And it's when I'm walking and I raise my vibration level, you know, I guess that's what a lot of psychics call it. And I get up to this level and I start to make the connection. My aperture opens. And then just as important is learning how to close it, because you don't want to be walking around like that all day. And people are going, what's wrong with you? You know, you're like spaced out or whatever. So because I don't remember, I record everything on my phone because I don't remember. I'm so much into this connection that when I'm done, what did I just say? What did I do? But I have it on my phone recorded. I actually told that to another medium, and she said, that's a great idea. I've never thought about that. I always come back and try to write it, journal it. And I said, well, I'm afraid I'll forget something. And sometimes I think I would forget. So I record the whole thing, and then I come home, and then I keep a spirit journal, and I write down everything that happened. And of course, I don't hear the voice of I am saying on, I'll say, okay, you think this will happen? Oh, yes, you do think it'll happen. Okay, why do you think it'll happen? And I'll have both ends of the dialogue there. And even though I hear it, you can't hear it on my phone.
I'd be interested, though, because I'm an EVP guy. If you do you ever picked up EVPs doing it?
I've never done that. I think that would be cool if somebody was there with me. I think that would be a cool experiment. I think also... brain waves to see when I make the connection, what is the difference? And I know Dr. Dean Radin does this, and he's had very accomplished mediums hooked up, and they saw that there is certain things that are going on in the brain when the medium is making the connection. So
a friend of ours that's been a guest on the show numerous times, Katrina Cooper, was just in Chicago not long ago, and I can't remember the doctor's name. It wasn't Dean Radin though, who's doing these tests. On psychics, they were doing it. She volunteered to do the test for her, and I think that's there's so much that it's all about money and research, and nobody wants to fund it half the time, except for maybe the government, and then we don't hear about it.
Right.
But
that's a whole other story that
we're going to go to commercial break, so you might want to hold on that soon.
No, there's so much to talk about. It's so great.
Oh yeah. Tonight, after we come back from this commercial break, we are going to take phone calls. I know my audience that does call in. If somebody calls in and is asking you to pick up anything on them, will you?
I don't usually do that. I mean, I can try, but I'm
no guarantees.
I have kind of a routine that I do.
Yeah,
I figured. Give it a try, but I can't, guarantee anything.
And it's only we only got a few minutes to talk to somebody. So, but you might pick up on something and say something. You never know.
If I do, I would tell them, and if I don't, I'd tell them that too.
Yeah, exactly.
How about that?
That works.
Okay.
And that's why I say, if you do call in, don't expect some full reading or anything like that. You know, we got other people that might call in, so we want to give time to that. But I found all this stuff really interesting because I'm only halfway through your book, but reading it up, it makes me remind that, man, I've had a lot of paranormal experiences. I mean, everybody's is different, but I think about the people who don't. It's like, what's the difference between me and you? Besides our parents' maybe openness, you know, is it just that some people are genetically or spiritually? We can get into the topic of reincarnation. You know, why are some people that are just open to seeing it?
I think because, well, I use a baseball analogy. I don't know if you like baseball, but
I do.
I said, you know, everybody can throw a ball, but some people can throw the ball 90 miles an hour. I think that's what it is.
True. and you brought up about like Norway, being they definitely have a different sense of spiritualism than we do here, you know. But being isolated, it's a psychic, you know, our psychic abilities might have been more intense than our ancestors' past because we needed it to survive. And, you know, their isolation could give them that because of the need to survive. Like I said, no doctors there. So I've always wondered if our psychic abilities are deeply innate in our DNA from our earlier past as a survival mechanism.
I think so. And then if you really get into it, you could talk about RH negatives and all that, you know, the blood types.
The alien DNA.
Yeah, all that kind of cool stuff. So,
Oh, yeah, I see all that stuff. Some of it, you know, I see you see all this stuff on your feeds and social media and all that stuff like RNA, alien DNA, and all this stuff. It's like, yeah, I want to know, are they alien, or you know, where does that come from? But why is the research being done? And again, it's being more accepted, but the money's not there yet to like fund some of these research programs that need to be done to look into psychokinetic activity, telepathy, you know, more on remote viewing, but also on things like, well, what is our genetic past to the idea of aliens? You know, they look at our genetic past, where we came from, but, you know, you never hear them talk about, like, well, the DNA strands that don't make any sense that are there, you know, like these, you know, that shouldn't be there by nature. That there's things that they just pass on by. Nobody would want to look at that. So it's money and openness and more people talking about. I think there's a paranormal awareness happening. It's slow. It's coming. More people are opening up to it. We'll see. But we're going to go to commercial break, guys. Okay. We'll open up the phone lines when we come back. You can call in at 219-230-4444. Call in at 260-225-94. Oh, didn't have the Skype line last time. I can't remember. 260-225-9419. I'll have to remember that one. It's posted in the chat. That's the newest one. I keep forgetting it. And then Skype ID OOJBland00 or Skype ID JBland Paranormal Soup. Call in. Tell us about your paranormal experiences or join the conversation tonight. We will be back after this short commercial break.
Transmission of unknown origin.
Transmission? Out here?
SOS.
Human.
Unknown.
Alien. Certificate X. Exclusive engagement at the Odeon Leicester Square. Now.
Any systematized transmission indicating a possible intelligent origin must be investigated. I will hear it.
In space, no one can hear you scream.
Paranation Magazine is a new paranormal magazine based out of Denver, Colorado. Our goal isn't just to give you the best paranormal content out there, but to promote paranormal unity. We're doing this by giving everyone an opportunity to tell their stories and to share their experiences. For more information, follow us on Facebook at Paranation Magazine and soon, paranationmag.com.
Knights of the Road, here's your stallion. The car for freedom. The car for hot excitement. The car for a man who is alone against the elements.
The Waibatsu Thunder.
The pride is back. It's the power of a compact.
Looks small, but it's so big.
Fuel injected.
Inject me.
My Batsu Thunder. On the toll road of life, you have to pay to prove you can. Live the emotion of an individual.
Thunder.
The awesome power of nature distilled into one vehicle. Because after you get struck by lightning, there's thunder.
The Waibatsu Thunder.
When Alex Gardner is asleep, he has an extraordinary gift. The government wants it, the scientists want it, but to keep it may cost him his life. It might be better if Alex didn't sleep at all, but he cannot resist entering the dreamscape. Can you? See Dreamscape in the West End and all over London now, Certificate 15. It takes an extraordinary adventurer to enter the dreamscape.
This is an APAC studio presentation.
Hey kids, tired of running away from home? Then getting lost and wrapping your big wheel around a cow? Then having no one to turn to other than that weirdo in the van with the dark tinted windows? Or his friend, your creepy Uncle John? Well, worry no more with new OnStar for Kids. Now you can run away in style with an OnStar for Kids kit installed in your big wheel, tricycle, or cute little smart car. Yes, just in time for Christmas, OnStar for Kids. So the next time you're on your way to Granny's house, or Weekend Dad's pathetic little bachelor pad, and you run over a homeless person in your toboggan, OnStar for Kids will clean up the mess, hide the hobo body, and get you there in time for nappies.
This is OnStar. Do you need someone to kiss your boo-boo?
This has been a presentation from Tim Morgan's APAC Studio. For more almost professional amateur comic studio content, visit the APAC YouTube channel. Search APAC 2002. That's APAC 2002 on YouTube.
Edgar Allan Poe wrote Spirits of the Dead with a pen dipped in warm blood. You will see the ultimate in terror with this important all-star cast. Brigitte Bardot, Alain Delon, Jane Fonda, Terence Stamp, and Peter Fonda in Edgar Allan Poe's Spirits of the Dead. Only Poe's demented genius could bring to the screen such horror and evil. Spirits of the Dead stars Brigitte Bardot, Alain Delon, Jane Fonda, Terence Stamp, and Peter Fonda. Directed by three masters of the cinema, Federico Fellini, Louis Malle, and Roger Vadim. Spirits of the Dead is an adventure in terror beyond your wildest nightmares. Spirits of the Dead in color is rated R.
You could accept the fact that this city is headed for a disaster of biblical proportion.
What do you mean, biblical?
What he means is Old Testament, Mr. Mayor. Real wrath of God type stuff. Exactly. Fire and brimstone coming down from the skies. Rivers and seas boiling.
40 years of darkness, earthquakes, volcanoes.
The dead rising from the grave. Human sacrifice, dogs and cats living together. Mass hysteria.
Tonight on Paranormal Soup, our guest is Dr. Bruce Solheim. We're talking about his paranormal experiences. He's the author of Timeless, a personal paranormal history. And I've been reading it, and there's so many good stories we're going to get to tonight. And I've only gotten halfway through, and I know there's so much more. I think he has like 30, 40 different experiences listed in the first book. I can't wait to get to the second book. But we're going to talk about a number of those tonight and some of the ideas in the paranormal, like telekinesis, telepathy, astral projection. We can get into all those topics tonight. This is your night to call in. If you had your own paranormal experience you want to call in and tell us about on the show, there's a number of ways you can do that. The phone lines are open. There's 219-230-4444. The new other phone line I keep forgetting is 260 240-225-9419. And then we can call in on the Skype IDs, Jbland, or the other Skype ID is Jbland Paranormal Soup. Call in, just hang in there. You'll hear us talking. Wait till we call upon you. We might, we got to get to a break in the conversation. And then when you call on, ask your question, or maybe Bruce might pick up on something on you, but we only got a little bit of time for your phone call, so it's not a full reading. But I really want to hear your paranormal experiences tonight. This is an open forum, guys. This is why I do this show, just like Bruce writes his book, is to give people the opportunity to discuss these ideas, these themes, these experiences, which I think everybody should be interested in. All right, let's get back to our guest. Thank you for hanging in there with me, Bruce.
Oh, yeah.
Now, I remember one of the stories in the book I thought might be a shadow person experience. I talked about mine with you a little bit. You were in an apartment with your girlfriend, and you had something vibrating, and you saw something in a window pointing at it. This is like a kind of telepathy story. Or not telepathy, telekinesis. Telekinesis.
Yeah, it was in Germany. And it was my wife and I, we were living above a Gasthaus, which is kind of like a bar. And above the German bar, they had a few rooms to rent. Well, we rented one of those rooms for a while when we first got married and moved out of the barracks, out of the Nazi barracks. And in the middle of the night, there was this, I felt something tugging on me on my leg. And that was one thing that happened. It was horrible. I like somebody was.
Nobody wants to feel that when you're waking up, is something pulling at the end of your leg.
No, pulling on your leg very hard, and then I started noticing. I got up, walked around, went back to bed, and then I started noticing things vibrating on the nightstand. And at first, I thought an earthquake, but I didn't know Germany was an earthquake area, so it's really not. But things were vibrating off of the nightstand. Like my wife's mirror and a clock and a few other little things that she had on the nightstand. So I got up and I was walking around, and I just happened to look outside across a green belt, and there was another apartment complex, 3-story apartment complex on the other side of this green belt, and I noticed that there was this shadowy figure in the window pointing at me, like this. And I as soon as I noticed them, they just and they didn't move like in a way a human moves. They kind of hovered away and into the darkness. And when they went away, it stopped vibrating. And so that was I don't know if it was a shadow person or it certainly could have been.
That's where my mind went when I read that in your book.
Yeah.
I wondered, because I had my shadow person experience, things would move.
Mm-hmm.
It could physically make things move and do stuff. So when I read that, was it like a shadow figure though that you saw? Did you see any kind of detail? Or
I didn't see much detail, just a shadowy figure. And I could see like they're pointing. And then my wife picked up on. I didn't pick up on it, but she picked up on that somebody had died in that apartment or that room. And I wonder if it was connected to this, whatever this evil thing was on the other side of the green. Maybe they were targeting whoever was living there and feasting off of them, or whatever. We didn't stay there very much longer after that. We moved to a much nicer place. Because the landlady was really horrible anyway. So she was cheating us and
trying to get you out of there. I think you remember in your books she did it to all the soldiers that rented a place there. Basically.
Yeah, and then she'd keep the deposit. Yeah, that's what the Army rental office said. Oh yeah, she's done this to lots of people. Well, that would have been nice had you told me that. When I registered.
Maybe she sucked. Maybe she did something to paranormal wise to get you out of there. Who knows?
Yeah, it could, or maybe she's tied into the shadow figure. Who knows
what's
going on there? Maybe she feasts on human souls. I don't know. She was a mean lady, and her son was horrible too. I mean, they were both horrible people. Yeah, that was a strange experience. Yeah. So I that kind of I mean, I had a it's not in, I think it might be in my second book. I woke up in the middle of the night and I saw shadowy things in my bedroom, and I had to say a lot of prayers and drive it out of there. But I think it was attached to a very pronounced dream I was having about an experience when I was a kid, and I wrote about that in a story, and I can't remember if it's in the second book or it'll be in the third book, but it was attached to that, and I think what it was the when I was a kid, I was kind of a firebug, and I made like a fire bomb And I know this is terrible. And if there's any young people listening, do not do what I did.
Do not try this at home, kids.
No, don't try it at home. I got like, not just regular gasoline, but like premium gasoline.
Oh, geez.
And I put it in this cylinder and I sealed it up. And then I put cherry bombs all around the top of it.
Oh, my
just
God.
A lot of cherry bombs that we got from the Indian reservation. And I took it up to the old sand pits above our house, near the Nike site, the old missile site there. And I detonated that thing. And it was right underneath what do you call those things? A madrona tree. It's kind of the trees that lose their bark and they're kind of yellowy and reddish peeling bark and beautiful waxy leaves. Anyway, it was much bigger than I thought. It created this giant crater. The flames went 30, 40 feet into the air. The windows were shaking in houses, and I got out of there really quick. But I think it singed some of the trees. So in this dream I was dreaming about that place again, and I hadn't thought about it since it happened, really. And the shadowy figures were there, and I had this feeling that they were Native American type spirits that didn't like what I did. And what I read about the madrona, and that was the most sacred tree for the tribe that lived in that area.
You firebombed
and I think it's a sacred site. It was an old tree, and I did like the worst thing I could do. You never want to mess with Native American sites. That's just a big no-no. But so I think that was attached to that. I don't know if that's really shadow figures or whatever, but they were shadowy figures in my room, and I had to ask them to leave. And so this is the kind of stuff that can happen. Stuff can come back and haunt you, even in the dream world, and actually in our physical world as we connect to the spirit world. So yeah, it was pretty frightening. And
there's always a risk when you open yourself up more to communicate with the other side too. You have to be having a little bit more risk than a normal person with attracting the negative at times.
Yeah, that's why you got to really learn to shut it down and use your spirit guides, and say, hey, it's like being a store owner. I'm closed for business right now. I can't talk to you right now. Come back tomorrow. We'll see. And you have to do that, especially at night, so you can sleep, because you don't want to be going through this all night long. You could slip into madness, if you're not careful.
Well, you wonder people that don't understand what's happening to them, if they have this ability suddenly thrust upon them. They don't understand it. How many of those people have been classified as schizophrenic and locked away?
It's funny you should say that. I asked a guy who's a psychiatrist. I asked him exactly that question, and he said, that's a good question. I've often thought that myself. I wonder if these poor tortured souls are really, they step into that world and they can't come back, so they're like stuck. And I always like to think, when I'm doing this, I have to keep one foot in this world and one foot in the next world. And it helps if you have people around you that are very grounded, like my wife, Ginger, is very grounded. I'm not going to say she's a skeptic, but she is somewhat skeptical of what's going on, so because I will tell her something that's happened, some amazing connection or whatever, and she'll say, well, yeah, that's really good, but can you help me go dig, some holes out in the back? Oh, okay. And then I'll just come right back down to earth, which is good. I think that's
nice, Bruce, but you still haven't fixed the fence outside.
Well, she's very nice about it, but I think it's you have to stay grounded too. And I've asked that same question, and the psychiatrist kind of, he kind of agreed, that, hey, that might be possibly what's going on.
Because they've doing a profession and seeing it, they've had to have seen some stuff that makes them wonder.
Oh, yeah.
Because I've seen enough of it my own, just in walking everyday life with people, to know there's another element sometimes to insanity.
Yeah.
That nobody wants to talk about, and that's the fact that there could be a spiritual side.
Yeah, and that brings up something earlier you were talking about the government, people that do this, the psychic spies and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you've read Joe McMonagle's book. He's was psychic or remote viewer #1. He was part of the Stargate program in the 70s. And there is, when you do this as much as they do it for the high pressure government side of this, there is a madness that kind of comes over you, because you are so tired, psychically tired and physically tired and spiritually tired. And he talks about how hard it is, and it really is exhausting. But the thing is, the people that do this for the government, and now supposedly the government shut it down because they said it wasn't effective. I don't believe that.
It just went dark.
It went dark, exactly, and they are using it. And the thing is, the people who are really good at it, it's almost like a curse, because now you're the government's property, you know, and you probably can't travel. You have restrictions on where you can go and who you can meet and what you can do. They're always monitoring you because
of what you've seen.
You know, stuff that is a national security concern, you know. So I wouldn't want to live my life like that. You know, I really wouldn't. That's why I believe what Dr. Simeon Hines said. You're as psychic as you need to be, you know. And I don't want to be that psychic, you know. That is not.
If you knew everything, you'd be God, you know. So I mean,
exactly. Yeah.
You can't know everything. But you know what? Some of these psychics have seen that, you know, the government probably would want to shut them down. One of my favorite stories of remote viewers, Indigo Swan. And when they asked him to look at the remote view the moon. And that was it. And he did, and he saw like an alien base there and all this crazy stuff he didn't expect to see. And then there's this awkward silence with the government agent afterwards. You know, like, so what did you see, Indigo? You know, like I saw nothing. You know, if you have that ability, you can see the secrets.
Yeah, and I think that. That's why I like to do it for friends and family and stuff like that, because not as a living, and certainly not for the government. You know?
No, I wouldn't want to do it for the government either, and that's how I've always been with it. I don't judge anybody who does it for money. I have friends that do, and they don't. And in my opinion, I even seen, because to me, they're not doing it for money. They're doing it because it's their passion. They're really good at it. But you know, that's what they're doing, and you pay people for their talents. And then there's some people are really talented at it. But for me, my experiences with it, I've always wanted to delve more into it, and I more recently have thought about delving. Like, I used to experiment with remote viewing, and I used to me and my wife used to play the telepathy games like you and your mom would play. And you know, I used to do that stuff, and then I just got away from it. Life gets you away from it, you know. But there's an interest in mine. I've had things happen even at work. Like, the kids will laugh at me because we'll have like these little size collars that you have to put on everything, and I'll do this thing where I'll just put my hand in a bucket, grab the first handful, come up, and it'll be the exact amount that I need. Like, how do you do that? I'm like, I don't know. Just do it.
You're in the zone.
Yep. Retail zone. Psychic. Yeah,
there you go.
You know, like, oh God. But you know, it's something I want to get back into. I strayed away from, and one of the reasons was for my kids, because my oldest son. I mean, my one's 3, so we'll see where his interest goes. Right now, it's Spider-Man, but my oldest son, Dean. I mean, he's totally got questions up the wazoo about psychic abilities and stuff. He's totally me at that age. Yeah. And so it's like, I need to get back into it, just so I have a way to maybe guide him somewhat, a little bit, you know, the ways of the Jedi. He looks upon it.
I think that's really important. That's really important. You know, I really owe all this to my mom. You know, that's why I mentioned her at the beginning of the book about, you know, I wouldn't be doing this if it wasn't for her acceptance of the other world, you know.
and is that what it's about for you? Is just to prove that there is another side, that there is an afterlife? I mean, that's what you say the book Timeless is. You think that's that's the end where this all ends, is just knowing that there's another side or an afterlife?
I think that's, you know, in the first book, that's really what I talk about. I talk about the fact that we shouldn't be afraid of dying, because I know I've talked to people who have passed on, and they're fine. They're doing fine. And I think that I have a theory about it that I developed in the second book about, you know, what I call alternate life experiences, or forks in the road of time, where and I remember as a kid, I used to think, I wonder if I've already died and now I'm living a different life or a different path, maybe on the same
plot. Oh, I don't want to give it away, but if you've seen it, spoiler alert, Discovery. Have you seen the Discovery with Robert Redford?
No, I haven't.
Oh my God, you have to see that. It's exactly what you're talking about, and totally spoiled it if you haven't seen it. Sorry.
Okay, I'll check it out.
You have to check it out. The Discovery. Okay. It's on Netflix. It's a Netflix original movie. It has its haters, but I'm not. I love the movie, and because of the concept of alternate realities and that idea. I thought the same thing I thought that same exact concept. So this movie like encapsulates it. That when I was a little kid, I had the same thought. Like, yeah, I could have died in it, because I had moments where I came close to death as a child, and like maybe I did die, and then I went into another reality.
Well, I really believe, and I've confirmed it with my spirit, friends and spirit guides, that we have had those experiences, that we did die, but only in one path, and another path we lived on, as if the incident didn't happen.
It's the Schrodinger's cat.
That I call the fork in the road of time. It just instantly changes. And so there's infinite universes, this idea of a multiverse and all that. And in the second book, I actually have a diagram in there about what I envisioned.
Is that why you have deja vu as the title? Timeless deja vu.
Yeah. So it was kind of a play on words because it's the second book. Here it comes again.
Yeah.
But I also talk about deja vu experiences and the different theories and kind of my theory of it. But and alternate life experiences, what I call ALEs, it has to do with reincarnation, but I think it's a little bit more complicated than that, because I think before you actually get reincarnated as a different person, I think you stay the same person, but you branch out. When one dies, you keep going in a different different
right,
branch.
like you're almost like get to live out the fullest extent of your possibility.
Right, like I guess the Chinese talked about the 9 lives of the cat. That goes back to Chinese philosophy. So I think I don't know how many we have. I don't know how many ALEs we have, but I think I've had at least 9 already. So I hope there's more than 9.
Well, I know as a little kid, I gave my mom the scare. There's a few times falling out of a car and getting run over. Or, I mean. Yeah, you wonder how many times you might have bit it, and now you went on to another life. And some people are like, what are they talking about? It's the idea that, let's say tomorrow you walk out and you almost get hit by a car. Well, yeah, you did get hit by a car. In that reality, you did, but you're going to move on to the reality where you didn't. Your consciousness is going to keep going until you reach that final, you run out of 9 lives.
Yeah. Like I said, I don't know if it's 9 or not, but right. I don't want to press your luck. You don't want to think, oh, I'm timeless, I can just do whatever I want. Well, we don't know exactly how many you get, and plus we have a responsibility in this physical world. And I've actually had a spirit talk to me. A friend of mine, his good friend died, and he asked me to contact her, and she was a nurse, and she told me that our main purpose in life is to alleviate the suffering of others. Now, that sounds like a typical thing a nurse would say, but she meant that for me, that's what we're supposed to be doing, alleviate the suffering of others. And that's why you don't want to take this physical life for granted. Do all you can to help the suffering, because to live is to suffer. I mean, people suffer all the time, all around us all the time. People listening right now, there could be people that are suffering quite a bit. And they need words of encouragement and to help, and even in a small way, if we can alleviate some of that, we're doing our job.
I take you've gotten into Buddhism pretty heavily at one point, or at least really looked into it, because the 4 principles of Buddhism, one of them is that we are here we are everything. Everybody suffers. Yeah.
Well, I think there's elements of that. I mean, I really loved Joseph Campbell and all of the Power of Myth series, But, talking about when we were kids, the things we understood as kids, we kind of forget until we get to be adults, and then we remember it again, like this, what you were saying. And also, all the experiences that we've had, like what was I thinking of? Just the infinite possibilities that we, pretend playmates, this idea.
Yes.
And people think it's just a frivolous kind of thing, but that's very important to children. And, I had a couple of them, and, I have a feeling you probably did too. And then we're told, oh, that person doesn't exist. And how heartbreaking is that when you tell them, hey, that person doesn't exist. Oh, you mean I can't talk to Johnny anymore? Okay, I guess I'm not supposed to talk to them anymore. I mean, my mom never told me that, but I remember like teachers and I don't think they did it to be mean. I think they just, said, hey, that's not normal behavior. So don't say that.
Don't scare us. Don't scare us.
There's no Santa Claus.
But it's also don't scare us. Don't scare us. My mom I used to say goodbye. I know people have heard this on the show before, but my mom would be like, who are you talking to? I'd be like, the little girl. And I'd always say the little girl, and my mom went to the psychic, and the psychic says, oh, and the little girl your son talks to? My mom's like, I didn't tell her anything about it. She goes, yeah. Well, that's your miscarried daughter. Because my mom had miscarried from previous marriage, 8 months in, I think. She says, that was your daughter you miscarried that he's talking to. And I remember playing with a little girl. And even my mom's like, there was no little girl there. And that where we lived in the apartment complex that you played with. I'm like, I remember playing with her. I remember what she looks like, and, to me, she was real. It's real as any other little kid I was playing with.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Yeah. And in a way she was in another dimension that you had tied into. So,
but you wonder what it does is when somebody else's perception comes into play with it, says that's not real, what that does to the kid, their perception of that entity,
Yeah. Well, we teach them not to be natural psychics and mediums, and use those things that we have, that all of us had, that ancient people recognized and relied upon. We think we don't need it in this modern world, and then we become so terrified of death that we're paralyzed and can't even live. It's not good. I think it's really good for people to study this stuff and study it with all seriousness, I think.
Now, communicating with the dead, what have you learned about the other side? What is it like? I mean, have they given you any kind of insight to what happens when you die, or what it's like on the other side?
Yeah, and my friend Gene, I guess I've had the most conversations with him, and he's the one who said that, we're timeless. And the first thing I noticed about him when I saw him was, I said, you're not wearing any shoes, And he said, we don't need them. And I said, you don't need them? Why? And he wouldn't answer me right away. The next time I talked to him, I said, let's talk about the shoes again. You never really answered the question. And he said, because we're so light, we are just light. And we don't have to have shoes. And then he said, in a funny way, he said, and I never really like wearing them anyway. So he gets to do what he wants to do. And he was an actor. So in the visions I had of him, he was, staging some kind of play. And so he's doing what he did in life. But he had no worries. He had no, sense of time. It was just all the present. And I call it the, kind of eternal sunshine, eternal light, and free and easy, and nothing to fear. All your fears have gone away. But then I asked him, I said, well, okay, that's great. I'll accept that. But what about the really bad people? Are they there with you?
Right. That's the ultimate question. Is Ted Bundy up there hanging with you? Because you might have a problem with that.
And my friend Gene, he said, well, they're in another zip code. Now, he likes to be funny. So he said, they're in another zip code. So they're not here with me, but they are in some, other world, but they're not
somewhere. That's a bit coy though. Is there, that's the ultimate question. Cause I've never been a big fan of the idea of hell, but at the same time, I am a fan of it. When you hear the horrendous things people do, it's like, I hope there is a hell for that person.
Yeah. I think what they have to do is probably come back and suffer quite a bit, in a physical entity somewhere.
They have to reincarnate.
Maybe they come back and have to suffer and go through another life until they learn the lessons they have to learn. So it's like even those people will get another chance, but it's not going to be pleasant. And maybe you could call that hell or not. I'm not sure. And I think there's a lot of hellish things in this existence, that we have to put up with. So, but I that was his way of answering it, which I thought was kind of funny.
I mean, what my thing is like if you get to a place where you're eternal and don't have the wants of or worries of life, then what do you do with your time? What are they doing up? These people say up there or wherever.
Yeah, he was doing what he did in life. He was staging a play and floating around and just having a great time. He loved every holiday. So every time there's a holiday, like today, I mentioned to Gene, I said, you must be really enjoying St. Patrick's Day. And he said, it's quite a party. So
they do.
They're doing stuff. They're doing what they did in life, and they were funny in life. They're funny.
for them, there's no time, past, present, future, but they're obviously floating along our timeline in a way, or keeping, in sense, some kind of track with our timeline. It's one of the things I've always wondered, because I've heard a lot of mediums say that to them there's no time, but it's like they're checking in with you at this time. So there's like some concept of time they have to jump into. I don't know. Maybe it's beyond our perception.
That I think it is a little bit beyond it. I don't know how to answer that other than to say that when I contact them, I'm no longer exactly who I am right now with you. I think that I have to contact them because there's a spiritual part of both of us, all of us, that is separate from who our physical body is, and I have to reach to that to contact them. And so I'm also in that realm when I'm talking to them. And then somehow it gets relayed back to me so I can remember what happened. And how that works, I couldn't really tell you. I don't know. I'm not smart enough or intuitive enough to know, but I know that there's, when I make that connection, I lose track of time too. That's why I like to record everything.
Right. Well,
so I know there's obviously time going on, but then there's the measurement problem, like in quantum mechanics, this idea of the measurement problem. As soon as the idea of the quantum or the double slit experiment or whatever.
Yeah. Wave
once
and particle.
You observe it, then it collapses the waveform and it becomes a particle instead of a wave. I think we're all waves, and when when I'm communicating with them in the spirit world, I'm pure waveform. And I think that might be part of it. So there is no time. And, but then I come back to this reality that we have, that we've constructed for our convenience,
But maybe that's why the memories it's hard to hold on to the memories while you're there, because the brain can't translate it, because the brain only has 3 dimensions to deal with, and there's a 4th dimension it can't translate. Doesn't want to translate that bit of information. Because I've noticed that with a lot of mediums I've talked to doing this show, is that they don't remember the readings with people, like what they said. My short time doing tarot, when I would do readings for people doing tarot, people would say, "You told me this and that, and it totally came true." And like, I don't even remember what I told you. I have no idea what I told you. When I used to do it, I would not remember afterwards what I told people unless they told me. And I thought that was such a weird experience. I'm like, I remember sitting there talking to them, but I really can't even think about what I was talking about.
Yeah, it's this, this idea of being, locked in this zone. And I compare it to, like, I like to use a lot of sports analogies, but you hear, players say that,
they get in the
especially
zone.
Baseball players, they get in the zone. And I think of like shoeless Joe Jackson. They asked him once, they said, "What is your theory of hitting?" And he didn't know. He just knew that when he got up there, he knew what was going to happen, and it was
you hit the ball.
He hit the ball. That's all he knew, is that he just hit the ball. He didn't have to understand it in any other way other than he was locked in that zone and can do it. And I think what it has to do with it does have something to do with the perception of time, because this idea of, you hear some players say when they're in the zone that actually the ball slows down. They can actually see it better. They say, "I'm really seeing the ball today." They'll say, there's a lot of old baseball saying, "I'm really seeing the ball today. It's like a beach ball coming in. I can see it. I can hit it." And other times it looks like a little BB and nothing goes right.
That's how it was for me.
There is, I mean, I think there is something to that is related to what we're talking about here. So
that's why I always related to the Force. I'm a Star Wars fan, and to the Jedi, to my son, when he asks about, because I always want my son to grow up with the idea that any of these things are possible, because if you tell kids that this is impossible and this is impossible, then they're going to believe that, and you're affecting their ability. So I've always left him open to that anything could be possible. Any of this could be possible. So of course he's sitting there trying to move something with his mind, going, but I'm like, yeah, just settle down. Doesn't mean you're going to move something with your mind right now. Who knows? Maybe, but simmer down. But that's right. But I did the same thing as a kid. It's like trying to move something with your mind. Sure. But like you said, they measure these. The other day. But there is an effect. There's this quantum effect. They are able to measure these things in the micro. And know our consciousness is affecting the reality around us in some shape or form. Like the 2-slit experiment, that the experimenter, the observer, is affecting the experiment with their own thought.
So consciousness is fundamental. That's what it boils down to.
And you wonder how, that does shape our reality in the end. Every day, they talk about positive thinking. I'm the worst at it. I'm a worrywart, but you got to think positive and imagine and visualize what you want. And you wonder, that they might pretty much be onto something if at the micro level we're affecting things just with our consciousness or will.
Right. That is part of it. The problem is that it's there are so many other competing variables. Like you really want something. There's probably other people that want that too, and they're all forcing their will on this thing, and it's not going to happen for everybody, So, but I think there is something to that. It's not as pronounced as like a Harry Potter kind of thing, and that's why people get disappointed. They think, oh, it's not real. It didn't work. I tried to think positively. It didn't work.
Damn secret.
But it does work. It works at a more subtle level, but the fact that it works is magical in and of itself, and sometimes there are big effects, that are very difficult to explain in any other way other than some type of magic, so.
Now you teach a class for the university that you work for.
Mm-hmm.
In this class, what do you do in it to for people? The people that are coming there, I don't know, they're looking for a paranormal experience, or if they've had paranormal experience, want to talk about. What do you guys do in the class? Talk about, or do you guys get into like going ghost hunting or experimenting with telepathy, or get into any of that kind of stuff?
Well, the first night we have I kind of set a baseline so everybody understands, what's telepathy, what's telekinesis, because a lot of people have had experiences, but they don't have any way to understand what it is or what's happening. So we just get a baseline established. This is telekinesis. This is telepathy. This is mediumship. This is what people think maybe is going on with apparitional experiences and demons and so forth. And then after that, then we start sharing. And it's very important for them to share because, like I said before, a lot of them haven't had a forum to do that. So it's extremely important for them to share. And then we provide some kind of framework of understanding their experiences. And then compare and contrast experiences, and everybody's very accepting. Nobody's saying, "Oh, you're full of crap. That didn't happen." It's a very supportive environment. And then I bring in guest speakers, experts. Like tomorrow night, on Tuesday night, I'm bringing in the shaman that I've worked with, and she's come into my class before, and she's in the Peruvian style. And she goes over what she does as a shaman and her different rituals and gives us a demonstration, and a very practical demonstration that is very powerful. I've also had somebody I know you've had on, Terry Lovelace.
Oh,
He's talked to my group about his experiences with abduction and aliens, and the students love it. They get to ask questions. So I'm just exposing them to as many different things as I can within a safe format. And then we also talk about ghost hunting. I'm not really a ghost hunter, but the college there's haunted places. So right outside of our building, there's an abandoned child care center. And that already sounds creepy, doesn't it?
Right.
An abandoned child care center with an abandoned playground. So I call it the haunted playground. So we go in there and we pick up on all sorts of, because these are all very sensitive people. Some of them are working psychics, and we go in there and some of them have devices with them, and we pick up on all kinds of stuff in that haunted playground.
The creepiest is when I'm a big EVP guy, so I get a lot of voices I record, and the creepiest ones to me are the kids' voices, and I got a lot.
Yeah.
And that's ones that bother me the most. If there is another side, why are there children's spirits? That doesn't seem fair. Like the kid should go to a good place and not be trapped somewhere. Saying, "Mommy, can you hear me now?" I had one of those. It broke my heart. That's one thing that never sits right with me as being a paranormal investigator is the children's spirits.
Yeah. There is a child, a little girl, and I think she is. I know sometimes kind of not good stuff pretend to be little girls. That's
true. It is true.
Skies. But there's also something rather dark there too that I don't really like, and sometimes I don't. The students really want to go, so I force myself to go. And I just ask for all the protection I can get, and do everything I can, protect me, protect
Pucker
them.
up that aperture.
Yeah, he has started. I'm not going to walk into the murder hotel, or whatever. So I know what to expect. So there is some kind of a thing that was never human there too, and it's not necessarily very aggressive, but it is there, and I don't know why it's there, and we haven't figured that out yet. So it's right outside of our door. I mean, you don't have to go very far to find these things,
You always wonder too. There's some of the non-human entities are elemental forces of the spirit world. Who knows what we're dealing with? Like I said, what I encountered as a shadow person, I still don't qualify as demonic. Most people would, but I don't. I feel like it could be something else. I don't know what. We do have somebody waiting on the phone line here. We got Zach on the phone line. How you doing tonight, Zach?
I'm doing pretty good, brother. How you doing?
Doing good. Thanks for calling. And you got a question for our guest tonight?
I do have a question and a possible story. Dr. Solheim, it's very nice to meet you, sir. How you doing this evening?
Oh, good. Thanks for calling in, Zach.
You're welcome, my man. So here's my question to you. Based on your experience in the Army, have you found that a lot of equipment was used in various different combat zones? Does the presence of those equipment make a location a hotspot for paranormal activity? And can you maybe give an example that you have either documented down or have experienced?
Well, yeah, I mean, we talked about it earlier, being that we were in these Nazi barracks, that was just a bad omen to begin with. But I can tell you something recently about an artifact. I had a bayonet, a World War II bayonet, and it was well used. And I remember about a year ago when I got this thing at a garage sale, I showed it to a friend of mine who runs a World War II museum. He's a military historian. And I showed it to him, and he looked at it, and he immediately said, This thing has seen a lot of death, and it just looks scary. It's all stained, and it's just. So I just had it on my shelf here, and I didn't think about it. And we've been having some kind of weird experiences here in the house, and there's probably many reasons for that. But when the shaman came here to kind of cleanse our house, she was drawn to that thing on my shelf, and she goes, "What is that?" And I said, "Well, it's this bayonet from World War II." And she said, "Get rid of that thing right now."
What if it killed somebody?
She said that has killed many people.
Yeah.
And I get this idea in my head that it was used probably in the Pacific Theater and has killed a lot of Japanese. I think that's probably, or it might have even been used in mutilations or what. It is filled with very negative energy. So the shaman had me wrap it in black material, put it in a box, and I need to get rid of it somehow. I give it to him. Or maybe I'll give it to my friend who runs the museum, but he might not even want it. So I don't know what I'm going to do with it, but it's not in the house anymore. It's in the garage. So I don't know if that answers your question, but there's certainly that can be attached to that, military stuff, especially stuff that's been in combat, and and then you hear about some of the really terrible things that happen, trophy taking and all that kind of stuff, and that I've heard stories like that, and that's a very bad thing to have around you, especially for a person who was in combat, because you need to move away from that. And if you have all these reminders around you all the time, you're never going to be able to heal from the experience.
It's funny you mentioned that, because I've never thought about it until you just mentioned that. But I have a couple of guns that are from that same era, and the guy that I got them from told me, these guns have killed many, many people.
Yeah.
Oh, that looks nice to go up on my fireplace right here.
Yeah, they're sitting out in the living room right now.
Yeah. Well, at the very least, have somebody, take a look at those and see if it's emanating anything. I mean, maybe it's already been cleared or whatever.
They'll just join the cluster of other spirits he's got roaming around his house.
Yeah, I've got all kinds of weird crap around here.
Did you have any other questions, Zach?
Well, actually, I had a story. Actually,
you had a story.
Of mine had told me,
go
and
ahead.
Bruce,
cool.
Bruce, I wanted to get your interpretation of it.
Sure.
So I have a coworker of mine. He was in the Marine Corps a couple years back. He's an Afghan veteran, but I can't remember exactly where he was stationed. I don't remember that part of the story, but there was one night he was with his squad, and for some reason they were around the old plane. I guess it was a Vietnam era plane, and the plane, the engine, all the internal equipment, it was out of it. It just sat there. Why? I can't remember why they said they got up into the plane, but for some reason, when they got up into the plane, they thought they heard the engine start up on this plane. And granted, there is no engine on this plane.
Right, it's gutted.
But they heard the noise going off, and they felt like this plane was about to take off for some reason. And actually, his commanding officer said, "Sarge, what am I going to do?" And he's looking at the commanding officer. He's like, "Hey, you're the officer here. What?" So you're the one that's supposed to be giving us direction as to what to do. So he said, "Forget it. We're going to jump out on 3. 1, 2, 3." And they all jump out of this plane. And the engine noise stops. And it was really dusty on the front of the plane there. But my coworker said that in a glass where the dust was, on there, someone had wrote, "Get the F off of my plane."
Oh, whoa.
And they never went back over to that plane again.
Yeah.
Bruce, can you give me your interpretation on that story? Because I've never heard of something like that before.
That's pretty crazy.
Well, I mean, that is a very powerful story, and I think it's totally, relatable, and I think that could happen. And I think these things, especially things that have been used in combat, have a residual energy to them. And they're talking about, you were talking earlier in the show about haunted objects and so forth. I think it does retain that, and the more traumatic the experience, the more it's going to store that. And I think in the case of this plane, it had stored that inside of it, and the resonance of it was still there, and that's what they picked up on. Being there in the military, and they're tied into the military object, and whoever was inhabiting, whatever spirit was inhabiting that plane, and there was somebody inhabiting that plane, wanted to be left alone, and they wanted them out of there. And maybe they were, I don't know if it was Vietnam era, might have been Air Force. Maybe they had bad experience with Marines. Who knows what it is? The inter-service rivalry kind of thing might have been going on. But to me, it's totally believable. I've heard so many stories of things that have happened in the military, and I think it has to do with the traumatic situations that people are in, that it stores that resonant energy in these objects. And I know people who go to the Gettysburg battlefield and dig up, rounds and bullets and stuff, and there's ghosts all over that Gettysburg battlefield. I've never been there. I'd love to go there.
Me too. That's like my paranormal cool bucket list. I got to go. Well, thank you, Zach, for calling in.
Yeah, Jason, thank you for letting me call in. And I tell you what, man, if you ever get a chance to go out to Gettysburg, it's definitely worth the trip. And Bruce, thank you so much for answering my question once again. And lastly, before I go, thank you very much for your service, man.
Oh, well, thank you, Zach. I appreciate that.
All right, thanks, Zach. Have a good night. We do have somebody else waiting on the other phone line here I want to get before we go to our last commercial break. Who do we got? 409 area code.
Oh, hello. My name is Kevin Van Horn.
How you doing tonight, Kevin?
Oh, not too bad. I'm calling to question for the gentleman there. You talked earlier about the random people who can talk to spirits and kind of don't know how to work with that ability. I'm kind of one of those people. So I was wondering, I noticed like the last few weeks now, I haven't been able to dream here lately because of that, and I was wondering if he had any tips to, deal with this.
So you feel like, like when you're sleeping, that spirits are contacting you just randomly. Is that what you're feeling?
Yeah, well, like it happened a while back. I was doing a lot of actual projection training and all that whatnot, and then it became to the point that I'm starting to get connected to spirits because you know, like the voices you're supposed to hear when you go to sleep.
Yeah.
And I get legit responses from them, and they've actually told me, you know, like I asked them questions about my future and whatnot, and a lot of it's become true. And it's just weird how that's happening, and it's the fact that here recently, I don't know if this makes sense, when you get summoned to where they are in the astral plane, that's been happening to me a lot as well, and it's been happening. That's been happening more than my dreams here lately. So I was like, why am I doing that more than my own dream time?
Okay, you know, there's a couple of things. Do you have you identified spirit guides, helpers, protectors?
I have asked numerous times for them to come to me, but the closest thing I have gotten was a couple of old gentlemen, but they've only talked to me once, and they really haven't given me much except don't take shortcuts.
Well, that's probably not bad advice right there. But every time, I'll just tell you, you have to deliberately turn it on. And, you know, we talked about earlier, you know, the aperture. You can't leave that open when you're sleeping. You got to close it down. And then when you want to communicate, then you open it up, but only with protection. And whatever, you know, even if you haven't really identified the name of your spirit guides or whatever, you can do prayers, you can do, you know, whatever your belief system is to ask for protection. And then only open that aperture enough. You know, you don't want to leave it wide open for whoever's coming in, because what happens, and sometimes I don't think it's they don't mean to do you harm, but there's a lot of people on the other side who want to desperately cling on to your energy, and they will hang on to you and cling on to you. And if you are unprotected, you're going to be dragging these people into your sleep, into your dreams. And it's not necessarily like they're bad, but they're just hungry for the energy that you have. And I mean, think of it, if you're in the spirit world, there's not too many people who actively can communicate with them. So whenever they sense somebody they're going to glom onto that person. They're going to rush them. And sometimes I even picture it's like a door opens and there's like this crowd at the door trying to force their way through the door. So that's why you need protection. That's why you need, in my case, I have Ozzy, who's the, you know, the strong kind of Indian chief guy, you know, who says go no further, you know, just one at a time, and only the ones I check out. So I think that's, you have to make sure that you're protected so you can rest at night. And then if you feel like there's something, if this is happening in your home, I think it's very important to make sure that your home is not, there isn't things residing in your home that may be causing some of this too. Like do some type of a cleansing. And I'm not an expert on it. That's why I have my shaman friend come and do that. And she did a great job, because we had some residual things here. Because when you deal with this kind of stuff, some of it unintentionally just carries with you. So you gotta get rid of it. You can't have that stuff hanging around you, you know, and you got to close down. You got to close for business. You can't be open 24/7. So
that was my biggest issue.
What's that?
So, sorry about that. I didn't mean to interrupt you there, but I said that was my biggest issue, is that I don't understand how to shut it off. That's my biggest issue.
Yeah, and that's where you need the help of your spirit guide, or through prayer, or just physically saying, hey, I'm closing down for business. I know you want to talk to me, but not now. Not now. You have to be very forceful. Sometimes just say it really out loud, and then just shut yourself down. Like I used to like picture a radio, those old radios with the knob that you turn to turn it off, just almost like that. So you're not receiving those signals anymore. And sooner or later they'll figure it out, and they'll go find somebody else who is, open 24/7. And yeah, because you can't have them coming into you at unwanted times. You have to control the situation, and there's nothing wrong with controlling that situation, because you know that's for your own sanity, for my own sanity. That's what I have to do.
All right, cool. Thank you very much for answering that question. That did help me a lot.
Oh, okay. You're welcome.
Thank you for calling and coming in. I would say too, you gotta. They say ground yourself. You know, you have to find a way to take your energy level down. You can't stay up in that high vibration forever. You're just not meant to, I don't think, you're not prepared for it. I don't know what the rules are, but I've noticed it with myself. I used to get heavily into like meditation and trying to communicate with spirit, and I was trying to discover myself. And there's a danger a lot of people don't like to talk about. There's a danger when you do this and you open yourself up. You open up your chakras. If you don't know what you're doing, that it could almost drive you insane. You do have to be careful.
Yeah, and I've been doing something recently. Every day when I do my spirit walks, I'll actually physically, like, you know how a dog shakes itself off when it's wet? I just kind of go like that. I just
shake the energy off.
Yeah, just shake it off, and bring my energy down and ground myself. And that's very good. Grounding yourself is very important. But even if you physically just have to shake yourself and say, "Get off of me," it's okay. Whatever it takes.
All right, cool. Thank you very much.
Thanks for calling.
Oh, you're welcome.
Bye.
I know I had that experience when I was in my mid-20s. We didn't really get into the ideas or talk about. I don't know if you've had experience with chakras, but I didn't know what they were. And my early 20s, I started to get into meditation. I read about chakras, but just a little bit, didn't know much about it. But I remember starting out with this feeling, either sometimes it would be in my throat, and I'd feel this spinning, or I'd feel it in the center of my head, or at the top of my head, or all of it. And sometimes even in my chest. I didn't know what chakras were. I didn't know that you could actually feel a pressure and have your stuff open up like that. I actually had some friends who were into Reiki kind of help balance me out. Because I was starting to see these sparkling blue lights that would fly around. And, I mean, I was having all kinds of experiences. And it was when I just started to meditate. I was in my early 20s. It's like I opened all that up. And some people are like, oh, you need to get that balanced or settle that down because you're opening. You become like a flame in the dark to the spirits, basically.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, he can hear us. He can see us. And I already had a negative experience before all that started. I'm like, I'm not going through that again. So people do have to be aware. There is a danger when you do start to open yourself up to this.
Yeah, it's it can be at the very least it can be very annoying. We had some entities that actually were non-human entities. They were elementals. They weren't necessarily evil or demonic or anything, but they were had gathered in the house here for whatever reason. And in the middle of the night, it was happening to me. It was happening to my son, but especially to my youngest son. Blanket pulling in the middle of the night, which is very disturbing.
Yes.
Somebody pulling on your blankets.
Anything when you're sleeping, anything that's messing with you, especially your feet area. It's like, come on.
It's very creepy. And the idea that feel like there's a presence, somebody in there, and also shaking bed of, the people experience that too, a shaking bed.
I've had that experience
like there's
too.
An earthquake going on. So now that we had the shaman come in, and who knows how this stuff got here. I think it was some residual stuff from my bad experience in Chicago, and just all my early, a year ago when I was just kind of learning how to officially do, mediumship instead of just spontaneous, I might have brought some stuff in here inadvertently. So she was able to clear all that out. And now my son is not, waking up in the middle of the night with his bed shaking or the blankets being pulled off of
that. Not a good thing. We're going to go. We got somebody waiting on hold. Whoever's waiting on hold there, just wait. We're going to go to commercial break and continue the conversation and the phone calls into the shows. But we'll be back. Don't forget, guys, go check out our Patreon. With you, we can do more. We can get our show on a podcast and expand our streaming services with your help. Check us out on Patreon. Just look up Jason Black. It's in the description. All right, guys, we will be back after this short commercial break.
Don't be alarmed. It's only a laser sword fight. Don't be scared. It's only the Death Star destroying another world. Relax. It's only a movie, and it's all for fun. Director George Lucas and 20th Century Fox present Star Wars. Rated PG. Parental guidance suggested.
At Lombank, we're with you every step of the way.
We sell your dreams.
We're not a soulless, monolithic institution.
We are, but we use nostalgic imagery.
It's walking into your dream home.
You can't really afford it. We'll lend you the money anyway.
It's kids graduating from college.
With pointless degrees riddled with debt.
It's happy picnics on the beach.
There's sewage in the water.
Family portraits with everyone dressed the same.
You look like twats.
Canoeing in the lake.
By the power station.
Catching fireflies in a jar.
And watching them die.
Cheering at high school football games.
The kids are giving each other brain damage.
These are the things our lives are made of.
Interest rates only 33.4%.
Lombank, we're the American bank that truly, more or less, cares.
About profits.
Of the second kind, physical evidence of a UFO. Close encounters of the third kind, contact. From Steven Spielberg, the director of Jaws, comes one of the most ambitious and unusual films ever made. And what you will see has never been seen before. It's a cosmic mystery crossing what many scientists believe will be the next threshold of human experience. It is called Close Encounters of the Third Kind. It begins in an Indiana town and leads to one inescapable conclusion. We are not alone. Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Certificate A. Now showing at the Odeon, Leicester Square.
The Science of Crime is back for another season.
The cigarette was hotboxed. He was nervous about something. His orthopedic surgeon records indicate
that he was a deaf woman who plays guitar. Mermaids, multiple wives, threesomes. This is serious.
They're not detectives or scientists, but they act like they are. They're crime scene cops that take matters into their own hands. These guys are so smart, they never have to look anything up.
He was neurotic, with a love of puppies and experimental cooking.
I knew it. It's a partial lesion caused by light to medium tearing of the thoraxal cortex. Obviously, you can tell at a glance by the fingerprint on the mustard bottle. Andrews, my acting sucks ass.
The Science of Crime. It's forensically boring.
From deep space, the seed is planted. Terror grows.
Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Certificate X. Now showing London Pavilion, Classic Oxford Street.
Heat 'em up. Do, re. He gone.
Tonight on Paranormal Soup, we've been talking to Dr. Bruce Solheim about his book, Timeless, a personal paranormal history, about his paranormal experiences, his ability to speak to the other side, to other spirits, to his spirit guides. This is a great show for people to call in tonight to talk about their own paranormal experiences or have questions for Bruce. The phone lines are open. You can call in at 219-230-4444. You can also call in at 260-225-9419. Skype IDs are OOJBland00 and JBland Paranormal Soup. Call in the last half of the show if you have your questions or paranormal experiences. We'll take you. All right, guys, let's get back to our guests. We do have somebody else waiting on the phone line here. Who do we got calling in?
Hello, Jason and Bruce. It's Sarah calling again from chat.
Hi, Sarah.
Hi, how are you?
Hey, Sarah, I got to ask, did you get to see the video of your phone call into the show?
Yes,
from the
I
ITC?
noticed it.
Yeah. That was a crazy video.
Yeah, I didn't hear all that until later. I was like, wow.
Yeah, Bruce, what we do every so often, we do a show called ITC Collective Night. We do instrumental transcommunication. We do live spirit boxes on the show. People call in. And Sarah called in about her haunted abode. And we had some interesting responses. So, yeah, I was hoping you'd seen that video.
I did watch it. It was fascinating.
Yeah, all I got to say is your roommate that's being bothered by the ghost, she needs to do something. Because it said some responses in there that I think are pretty disturbing.
Oh, yes, I agree. I haven't... It's a male roommate. He's just a little kid from Ethiopia, and I don't want to scare him.
Yeah.
And he has, like, he really believes in voodoo and all that. So I haven't said anything to him, or I'm going to lose him for sure.
Oh,
and I need to, and like, he's sharing rent with me, right? So.
But yeah, you have a question for our guest tonight?
Yes, I have a couple of questions. Bruce, thank you for taking the time to answer questions tonight. When you see spirits, what do their facial features look like?
Well, it depends. I've seen my mother a couple of times, and she looks like she did in life. Maybe a little bit younger than she passed away at age 70. So she looks maybe 20 years younger than that, maybe younger. And she's also golden when I've seen her. She's like radiating gold. She's gold, it's her features. She's just younger and she's golden. And it's very warm feeling. My friend Gene, I've seen him as a younger man too, probably. He was 59, I think, when he died. And I see him in his 20s, very strong, very healthy, Viking kind of guy, long hair. And so I see his, his whole, how he was. Some people I see them, it depends on the person, how I see them. And it very much depends on who it is and what kind of connection I'm making. I kind of look at it like the old-fashioned phone lines. Sometimes you get a good connection, sometimes you don't, and sometimes the information gets through, and you can get a good visual. Other times you just hear the voice, or sometimes I just see the text of their answers when I can hear them, and then sometimes I just see the text. Like I'll ask them a question, and then they'll, like in handwriting, write it. So it really depends on who I'm communicating with.
Okay. Do entities ever taunt and torment you?
Oh yeah. There's some bad stuff there, and like I said, we had these elemental type nature elements that were never human, that were here in my house, that somehow got dragged in here, and the shaman had to come in and have them move on. So yeah, they were tormenting me. I mean, I had a few blanket pulling incidents myself, but they were really tormenting my son more than me. Interestingly enough, they did not torment the females in the house, just the male. I don't know why.
That's interesting.
Yeah, my wife was not affected. A friend of ours who comes and stays, she's a lady too. She didn't feel anything at all. So they were just coming after. But and it usually happened to me when my son was with his mother for the weekend. That's when it would come after me. So I think it preferred my son, and then I was like number 2.
Okay, so they look at the whole family. They go after the whole family.
The male family.
Yeah, in this case, the male members. Yeah, and I think in this case, the shaman explained it that these were non-human entities, elementals, as she called them. She said they weren't necessarily evil or anything. They just liked the energy, especially the energy of my son, who's 19 years old, my youngest son. And if he wasn't around, then I guess I would do. It's like a second choice. So they like the male energy. And as far as other things tormenting, I've had these kind of more negative experiences, and Jason was also talking about the spirit or the shadow people and stuff like that. So it really depends, and you really have to take charge and be very forceful with them. And like the shaman lady, she's very good. She said she will laugh at them, and they don't like to be laughed at. So sometimes that can get rid of them. So some of them want your fear. They want your attention. They want you to worry about them or be, it's like a person who she calls them energy suckers. They're just sucking your energy. So you gotta shed them. You gotta get rid of them, because it's not good for us here in this physical world to be connected to them 24/7 or whenever we're in our house. We got to have our own space.
Yes, that's why I'm not at my basement suite right now. I'm taking a break from it. But what struck me about your conversation with Jason is you mentioned you encounter them in your sleep. That's what happens to me. I experience these lucid dreams, and it's just like I'm interacting with an actual person. And what I've noticed they look human, but it's like they're slightly deformed in some manner, and they look like they're wearing pale makeup. They have this fixed blank stare and a grin on their face. And if I was the closest comparison I can give you guys right now is if you've seen the movie what's it called, Insidious.
Yes.
Remember when Josh goes into a house in dream state and he sees this smiling family, the lady in white with the wide eyes and that wide grin? They look like that to me, and it's just like you're trying to talk to a person who doesn't have the full intellectual capacity to respond to you in kind. They do respond, but it's like they're not very sound of mind when they do it, and
or maybe not human, Sarah.
Yeah.
The feeling I'm getting right now as you're describing this is not, when I get contacted and see spirits of, loved ones or friends or people that I've known that I know were good people and are good spirits, it never appears in such a frightening manner.
Right.
And I get a red flag from what you're saying, that these things are intruding into your dreams, and because in our dreams, in our dream state, we're not always protected. We can, unless we ask for that protection before we go to sleep, and your aperture could be opening up in as you get into your dream state, and they're taking that as an avenue, as an opportunity. So somehow you have to protect yourself better when this is the feeling I'm getting. You need to protect yourself better when you go to sleep so they don't take that opportunity, because it sounds like they're opportunists. And they don't sound good to me.
No.
It doesn't sound good. Or even if they remind you of somebody that that was good, but if they're somehow distorted in the way you described, your gut is telling you, and actually the way you're describing it, my gut is telling me these things you need to get them away as quickly as possible and as forcefully as possible.
Thank you for validating my concerns. I just wanted to add that so far me and a couple of other people have detected two types of energies at the basement suite. One's a very strong, loving force, and the other one everyone has described like a wild, rabid dog. And it's just like there's this unkempt beast walking around that's just a creature. That's you just pick up on it when it's hard to describe. You feel it, even if you don't see anything. Bit of a hard.
But it feels
concept.
like animalistic to you and the others there.
Yeah, it feels.
I would say that the place you're talking about needs to be spiritually cleansed.
Yeah.
And it really needs a good spiritual cleansing. And however whatever your belief system is, like I said, I have a friend who's a shaman in the Peruvian tradition. She's a lady in her 80s. This lady knows what she's doing. She's been doing it for a very long time. She's very nice, a sweet lady, and she's very powerful at what she does. And the proof is in the pudding, because we have slept nice and peacefully ever since she's done this. So. And we followed her advice to make sure it doesn't happen again. So I would recommend that. I'd highly recommend, so you can, so these things can get out of there, because you have to have your safe space,
Oh, thank you very much. What about that loving force we can feel there as well?
I wouldn't. Yeah, you can differentiate and say, whatever stuff is good, as long as it's not, annoying you or keeping you awake at night or whatever, as long as it's a sweet and loving kind of thing, I don't think that, that is, that's fine.
But at some point, Sarah, if the doorway's open and sweet and loving's coming through, but also creepy people wearing fake masks are coming through, or beast elemental forces, it's time just to close the door on all the above just for a while until things settle down. You can't live in that. You got to do something to try to clear it out.
I think that's probably a good idea. Yeah.
Yes, my other concern is, I've researched this material so much, and usually when you try to get rid of them, they come back with a vengeance, and that's my fear.
Yeah, I understand that. Yeah. I understand that fear. I do, and that's why I don't try to do it myself. I get somebody who is really well trained, has done this for decades, and knows what she's doing, instead of myself, who's not I'm not a professional at spiritually cleansing buildings or whatever. I mean, this lady does it to, like, a neighbor who had a rental house that had some stuff going on there. She cleansed that too and did a great job. So I would find somebody you can trust with experience to do this, and then you don't have to be fearful of it. I mean, you can be there when they do it, or you don't have to be.
I'm one of those people, Bruce, that believes they should be there for it.
I was here for what she was doing because I wanted to learn from her.
Yeah. I think these things, you can clear a place, but there still could be an attachment to the person somewhat. You clear the place, and the person brings it right back in with them. So my suggestion is you find somebody that you can get a lot of personal references of people that have attested to them doing it, and get somebody to clear it out. We do have somebody else that's trying to call in, Sarah. So thank you so much for calling in, and definitely take Bruce's advice.
Thank you, Sarah.
Hey, thank you, Jason and Bruce. Have a good night.
You too.
Have a good night.
You too. Bye.
I would say too that, like, in the meantime, until she gets somebody there that, you can set boundaries yourself. You know, talk to them, tell them, hey, this is what is not allowed here.
Yeah.
Sometimes you may feel a little crazy doing it, but hey.
I've seen that work so many times, though, with people that, just straight up telling them, no, I want you out of my house. And it's worked. It's not going to work for everyone, but I think that's the first thing you should try. We do got another call on the line. We got Laura Lee on the line. How you doing tonight, Laura Lee?
I'm great, thanks. How are you?
Doing good. Thanks for calling. Well, I had to call you back because you were trying to call in while I had to call her. Remember, Laura Lee, call the other lines. If those lines are full, I got other lines. I got another phone you can call in on.
Okay. Well, I figured Sarah was on the one line, and I knew the video one didn't work. So.
But you're here.
Okay. I'm here. Hi. By the way, what a fantastic guest. Thank you so much for taking my phone call. I'm enjoying everything you were sharing with us tonight.
Thank you.
I just had, sorry, there's always a little bit of a delay on my end. I apologize. I just had a question for you. We've been through quite a bit of paranormal things ourselves, but what I wanted to ask, you mentioned the elementals. Have you encountered any other
Uh-oh. She cut off. You there, Laura Lee? Oh, connection lost. There was a problem with the network. Laura Lee has been calling the show for 3 years, and
what she started there.
I'll tell you where I know where Laura Lee's going with it. I'll see if she returns here. It says connection lost. She might be coming back, but she's lived in a haunted house. She's been on. Was it Paranormal Survivor, Rob? Was that the show?
Hi, I'm back. Sorry, there was a poor connection. I apologize.
Okay, I was kind of like filling him in a little bit on your situation since we didn't know if you're coming back.
It never fails because I'm asking a question
about it.
Yeah. Yes. No, I was just asking about the if you had ever encountered any other kind of being, such as like an intergalactic or aliens,
yeah, we didn't get
or
into
anything
alien
like
topic
that.
tonight.
That's why I'm asking, Jason.
Yeah.
I have to ask.
Well, I have in the latest book, because the first book I didn't want to go too far. I was testing the waters, to see the reaction. So now I've kind of let it all hang out with the second one, and the third one will be even more. But I do contact not only those that have departed, but I also have contact with someone that I originally went by the name the Progenitor, which is a kind of a cool moniker.
I know, yeah.
And then I found out as I furthered that, and I actually first contacted him in 1997. And I remember telling a colleague of mine once, just because she was an anthropologist, I told her, hey, I've contacted this Progenitor, he's supposed to be connected to original, the origins of human beings and stuff. And I think he's an alien presence. And she just looked at me like I was nuts. So I said, okay, I'm not going to mention that again. And so it didn't come back up again until last year, actually. And I made a connection with him. And yes, so I have a connection with an ancient alien, I'll put it that way, who I seek advice from, and I get kind of interesting information. I have to be careful what I share because I like to let it percolate a little bit, and I don't want to cause mass hysteria or whatever, or these people that holding the signs, the end is near, stuff like that. So I always have to be very careful. But yes, I have contacted alien presence, and interestingly enough, after that, and Jason was mentioning a spiritual cleansing. I did do my personal spiritual cleansing first before we brought her into the house. So that is important. I'm glad you said that, Jason. But since I've done that, which was about 3 weeks ago, I've actually seen and my son was with me when we saw it. We were outside and we saw a UFO the other night. And I hadn't seen any since and I thought, I've never seen one. But then I thought back to when I was a kid. No, I've seen them before. I just have put it out of my mind.
Oh,
so for some reason it was kind of blocked,
Oh boy.
So
yeah, exactly.
The floodgates are opening, Jason, is what's happening to everything. It's all connected, right? But yes, I've encountered these kind of things before, and you live in a house where there's a lot of these things. Is that what's going on?
That's an understatement.
Oh, it's quite the story. I'm actually writing a book about it. And
good.
I'm actually speaking at a pair conference. If you can believe that, Jason, I got asked to speak about it. But there's 4 entities. It started actually where it identified itself in a dream to me about 13 years ago. And I actually am a psychic medium as well. And there's actually 4 main entities here. I have pictures of them. Other people have experienced them. Jason himself has experienced much.
I'm experiencing it now. I'm telling you right now while you're talking, I had somebody trying to call in, but my phone was doing something really weird while you're talking. It's like the whole app is like shaking. I've never seen Skype do that on the phone. Like it was like going back and forth. It was really weird. Always weird stuff. She's fried my mixing boards before.
Yes. So, my husband's been thrown 15 feet. We've been burnt and scratched. But you know what? What's made it so much better is understanding the laws of the universe and like attracts like. Not that we were depressed or angry, but really making a concentrated, focused effort on raising the vibration within the house, within ourselves. And since I've been following this path, I'm actually a registered nurse, but since I've been following the path I am now, The entities are still here, but we are not having the interaction and issues that we were having like quite a few years ago.
It's interesting. When you were talking, all of a sudden I felt my jaw tightening really tight, like I was almost grinding my teeth. I felt this real tension in my jaw, and as you were talking about these things that are in your home.
I know the name of the darkest entity here, and it's animal form, because I was given, like, the dream, it happened over 13 years ago, and it's like it happened like 6 hours ago. I remember it. And I never actively looked. I usually work with angels in the archangelic realm and elementals. So I was quite fascinated with your story about the elementals. But what happened, I was looking up some information for somebody else that had contacted me. And when I was looking for her, there I found the exact spelling, the exact animal form, everything I'd been told in my dream. There it was on black and white on the paper. Yes. Part of the problem is where we live geographically too. So,
is it near water?
Yes. Well, I live in Thunder Bay, northwestern Ontario, Canada. I'm about 40 minutes away from the Minnesota border, and I'm on Lake Superior.
Yeah, that's Lake Superior. Yeah,
lot of
very powerful body of water there.
I was just going to say a lot of First Nations Aboriginal history here, all over.
And they say large bodies of water could be psychic conductors to this activity. I remember Ghost Lab did that. They tested the Missouri River with a haunted location that was right by the house that was haunted, and they found electromagnetic energy coming from the river.
Well, we are known for the native legend. There's a picture. It's very clear. I've got a few on my profile for the sleeping giant. And it's a mountainous range that looks like a giant man laying down sleeping with his arms crossed. And there's a legend about a silver mine close to it. Apparently, anybody that has tried to access the silver has died. So there's quite a bit of legend and stuff around here. I'm actually getting contacted by quite a few people actually locally as well, Jason. So there seems to be a real increase in activity even locally.
Ooh. Well, I definitely want to hear more about that. I got somebody else waiting on the line before we go to the show. Nope. But thank you so much, Laura Lee, for calling in.
That's a fascinating story. That's really interesting. I want to read your book.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, you got to write a book too.
Thank you so much for taking my call. Thank you. You guys have a good night. I'll still be listening.
All right. Good night, Laura Lee.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
All right. Before we run out of time, we got one other person that's been waiting on the phone line. Who do we got on the phone?
Hey, guys. It's Tyler.
Hey, Tyler. How you doing, bud?
Tyler.
Pretty good. I've been doing pretty good. I mean, I'm kind of like some of the past callers with the dreams and stuff. I've learned how to communicate a little bit with the other side within my dreams, like the good entities, but I also have like the negatives, but I've learned how to shut them out. Like when I start to have those dreams, I will wake myself up. I'll find a trigger in the dream and then wake myself up. But now, like, one of my biggest fears, I've been a lifeguard. I've gone down big water slides, had my heart pumping many times, saved lives. I've seen a lady get hit by a car in front of me and went up to it, yanked her out of a burning car. But when you put a spider in front of me, I will freak out. I don't know. I hate spiders. So, and this is back, and then I started, like, about 3-4 years ago, I started taking some medication for bipolar. And that medication, like, I would start falling asleep, and then I feel this jolt, and I wake up, and there'll be this giant spider. Even my parents and my sister were like, "What's going on? You need to go back to bed." They huffed me off, and I kind of remember seeing that spider. Well, like, where I'm going at with this is now, like, I'd say about 3-4 weeks ago, I was dreaming of something very dark, and I was trying to wake myself up, and it's like, no, I'm not. You're not going to wake up from this. I'm gonna make you really scared and
this is a voice telling you this in the dream
again. Yeah, it was this really, really. It was a very dark looking dude. I don't know it, and so I was like, no, man, I'm waking myself up. I'm not. You can go, And so when I woke up, I seen the giant spider on me, and I ripped my clothes off, and then I went right back to sleep. And I woke up cold, and I'm like, man, it's cold in my room. Why? What's going on? I feel like now that it's attacking, and now when I'm waking up, it's showing me my fear, and I don't know what more I can do that, where I'm getting at with this is just like, how do I shut those guys out?
Well, what just came to my mind just now was that you said you started taking this medication, so you want to make sure that the medication...
I've been off of it. I've been off of medication for about 3 years now, 4 years, because I've been an addict too, so I've been like trying to get off of all substances too. So, I mean, I've been working through therapy and talking to people with my inner demons, and not relapsing. I've been sober for 5 years, so it's been a good struggle, but it's just that
Tyler,
that part.
Tyler, can I ask you a question? Based on what you're saying, it sounds like you've seen a lot of negative stuff in your line of work. Do you think that you might have some symptoms of like PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder?
Yes, I have a lot of it.
I think that's an element of what you've seen a lot, and I think that's something that may be a factor in this too. Not to say that you're not encountering these entities, because I believe you very much.
They prey upon that.
I think that is an outlet, or that is an inlet for these entities. If a person is suffering, and it sounds like you're a very heroic person and have done these wonderful things, but you paid a pretty big price for it. And
I never served in the military. I just so happen to be there every time. It's like my guides put me there because they know I will react, because I know I got the protection with me.
Yeah, and now you have to, you've been helping other people, so now you gotta. I'm really proud of you for moving away from addiction. I mean, that is tough. That is really tough, and I've worked with a lot of veterans dealing with substance abuse and stuff, and that is a very tough road. But it sounds like you got to take it incrementally, and not try to do everything at once. And I think you're thinking about it, so that's the really good news. And not having a good sleep, is going to invite these kind of things in too. So if your dreams are disturbing you and disturbing you enough to where you're not getting good enough sleep, then that puts you in a weakened state, not just physically but also psychically.
And I get those, like I said in the chat too, it was like I've done it where I've shut myself completely out, where it just feels like I just fell asleep, but I just slept like 9 hours, and it feel great the next day when I do that.
Yeah, but it's not,
it's
not
just
consistent.
I don't know how to stop that fear. I mean, I feel like medication kind of like hinders me, if that makes sense. Like I need to be working and be a productive member of society, but
yes.
And then sometimes like even some of those medications make it worse.
Well, if they ain't working, then you need to talk to your doctor. That's what I'm saying. If you're taking a medication, it isn't, you're seeing stuff, or it's making things worse, and obviously you need to reevaluate what it's doing.
And I think Tyler, that it seems like I'm a walking advertisement for the shaman, but if there's a way that you can, I'm not getting a cut of that, by the way, which she does. But I just think she's a wonderful person. If you can find somebody a very experienced person who can work with this kind of, doing a spiritual cleansing, I think that'll give you a good baseline to protect yourself from this stuff intruding into your life and, you know, and dragging you down and taking your energy away from you.
At least covers one of the bases. You know, you can take care of the medication stuff later, Tyler.
Yeah.
Yes, totally. I totally agree.
All right, well, thanks for calling in, Tyler.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you for your services too, there, sir, for everything you did for our country.
Oh, well, thank you, Tyler, and God bless you. I hope everything works out for you.
Yeah, bless you too, sir. Thank you, guys. Good night.
Good night.
Well, it's the end of the show, man. It goes by so quick. I want you to get out your information, whatever last thing you want to get out to the audience before we leave.
Just you know, everybody be well, and you know, we're going to live forever, but take care of each other. And my books are on Amazon. The latest one, Timeless Deja Vu, and the original book from last year, Timeless, a Paranormal Personal History. So check them out on Amazon, and you can go to bruceolavsolheim.com and find out what other stuff I've been up to. So I just appreciate the time, Jason. I
appreciate you being on. It was great having a conversation with you. I'd love to do it again, too.
Maybe next year when the third book comes out.
What do you think the third book's going to get into more like alien stuff? Because you talk about the progenitor.
Yeah, you'll find out in the second one when you get. I know you're a busy man, but when you get to the second one, you'll get some progenitor, and you'll find out what his real name is.
Oh. When you see, I want to keep talking at the end of the show, but one of the things you say progenitor, I think of if you've ever seen Ridley Scott's Prometheus. That's what I think of.
I haven't seen it.
You should see that.
Okay.
When you talk about the progenitors, because I think that's kind of what they call them in that. Well, thank you so much, Bruce. Again, I'd love to have you on. There's a lot more we could talk about. Next Sunday, we'll have Bill Bean, the Exorcist, on. We're going to talk about demons. Of course, that always brings a lot of people to watch when we talk about demons. But yes, we're going to have Bill Bean, and we're going to be talking about the dark side of things, but also the good side, and how he helps people. It's an incredible story. I've been so looking forward to having him on. So that'll be next week. Same bad time, same bad channel. Don't forget to check out our Patreon page. I will say it again. Just help us out. $1 a month, $2 a month. $2 a month gives you access to the new coming soon podcasts that we're going to be putting up on just Patreon only. You can hear episodes exclusively to Patreon. All right, guys. See you next week. Thanks for watching. Have a great night.
Oh,